now that I have disrupted the meeting. Thank you all for being here. I've been traveling today and appreciate council's patience and not knowing whether I'd be here or not. Neither did I, but glad to be here. Also, council, thank you for your patience on Monday as we went through our agenda briefing as well. So thank you for that. With that, I will go ahead and call our meeting to order. It is our June meeting. We are now 1/6 into the year, 6 months left. So amazing how fast this year feels like it's going, and yet it feels like it's been forever. So with that, I will again welcome you all here, and I will ask Josh for our invocation, just as he takes a swallow.
If you bow your heads. Dear Lord God, thank you for letting us all be here together. Please bless this meeting for the benefit of the public's business, and bless everyone that is in here. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chief. Will you please stand and recite our invocation? Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Council, you have your agendas in front of you. As we also went over them, as I mentioned, on Monday. Are there any adjustments to tonight's agenda? Staff? Okay, thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve our agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Now. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is made. Received a second from Mr. Harris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you for that. We will follow along our agenda. The next item on the agenda is consent items. We've got a couple sets of minutes. We've got a public hearing date for July 14th for an annexation. And we've got another annexation public hearing scheduled for the 14th as well as approval of the 21-22 year-end budget amendments. Council, you've got your consent. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
I'll make a motion we can approve the consent items.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Is there a second? Motion is made. Received a second from Ms. Harris. Any other question or comment on consent? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is a report from our wonderful librarian branch manager, J. Hoyt Hayes quarterly report. It's a good one. Thank you for being
Good evening.
here.
It's been a while. So first I want to start off by just giving a recap from since I've been here last time I was here was in February. So through March through May, we continue to do regular programming, story times for toddlers, preschoolers, attempting to get teens into the library, and continuing our most popular program for adults, our Pinterest program. We are currently seeking input from patrons on interest for an in-person adult book club. We've had a few people asking about it, so we're polling patrons and asking them what days and what times work best for them to, we want to get the best out of it. Currently, our book club for adults is still meeting outside of the library after hours. We have our combined Statesville Troutman book club that's meeting at a restaurant in Statesville on the first Thursday each month. We have passive programs that we've been passing out to the community. So for the past few months, we put out little take and make activities on the tables for families to take home. Through March and May, we passed out 145 of those. We also have a little we call it our little mailbox, writing prompts in the library, and it's to encourage early literacy activities for children to get practice with writing and just to get fun little notes from them. So through the past 3 months, we got 68 responses from kids. That was a lot of fun. Sometimes they'll just doodle little pictures or scribbles, but it's all fun. As for actual program attendance, through March through May, we had 3 Pinterest adult programs with 26 adults in attendance. We offered 3 programs for teens, and no one came to those ones, unfortunately. We offered 27 programs for school age down to infants and had 338 attendance for those. So that is by far our most popular area. Other library usage statistics, we had 391 patrons use our computers through the 3 months. Overall, during those 3 months, we had 8,900 visits to the library. Year to date, currently we have checked out 43,277 books, and that's an increase of 37% over last year. Last month, we had Iredell Charter visit our library again, and they hosted a Young Authors Night. Interestingly enough, that was the last program that we ever had at our library before COVID and the shutdown, so it was kind of interesting to offer that again for the older kids that never got the chance to present their work. But it was a chance for some of their students to get to present their original works that they've been producing at school. So we had a few families and students participate in that. And as you may have known, we had early voting at our library this year. So that was the first time that ever happened. So it was interesting. It was loud. And at times we were happy when it was over. But it was a good experience. And we had a lot of new people that showed up to the library that never got to visit the library before. And we signed up dozens of new people for library cards during that period. So that was good. Right now, we are just starting our summer reading programming. We have boosted up our program for our in-person programs. We have obviously our regular story times, as always, on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then every Thursday, we have school-age programs at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And teens, we're scattering out throughout summer, and we had one today. We actually had some teens show up to that one, so that was good. And we'll have another teen program on July 7th and July 21st. All of our in-person programs do require registration, so all of that information is on the library's website. Every week we'll be passing out take and makes, so rather than just having one take and make a month, we have something different each week. And we have increased numbers of those as well. So already this week we've passed out over 150 of those. So other passive programs we have going on in the library, we have a scavenger hunt that will be up in the library all summer. And if you come in, you'll notice how beautifully the library is decorated. Our theme is all about the ocean this year, so we've got lots of ocean decorations up. And as a partnership with Town of Troutman, we will have a performance in the park here in town on June 15th at 10 a.m. with down-to-earth aerials. Other library updates, we added a new section to our teen area. We recently purchased a new table and chairs and a charging station for teens to be able to use that area, especially during school, so they have somewhere to work other than in the children's area. They can charge their MacBooks and their cell phones and all of that, but it's their own space now. And then other staff updates. Recently, within the last week, I received a promotion. So as of June 16th, I will be the youth services librarian over the whole county, and I will be working in Statesville. In the meantime, between now and whenever my replacement is hired, I'll be still filling in Troutman and overseeing the business in Troutman. But so this will be my last town meeting. But
I would
thank you.
say great, but it seems like we have a way of training wonderful folks. And
That
they
seems
end
to be
up,
the trend, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Just send the bill to state the library.
Yeah. Yep.
Services rendered.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a dream of mine to have that position. I didn't think it would come this soon, but the opportunity came up and I had to take it. So
Well deserved. Awesome. Any other questions for?
My thought is totally selfish. I want to see the team program that you have, but I'll go and look it up myself.
Okay.
Send my teams over.
Yeah, send them over. Yep, check out the website, sign up. We'll have space.
Is there,
Just,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Congratulations, Kelly.
you.
And we hate to lose you, but
Thank you.
best of luck with the new spot.
Thank you.
It's your dream job, so.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thank
that.
you for everything
Thank,
you've done for us.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. The June 15th, the performance in the park.
Yes.
Is there more information on the website?
That one, there is a little bit more information on the website, and there is no registration required for that program, so anybody that is interested in that can just show up.
Is there a time?
It's at 10 a.m.
10
Yep,
a.m. on the 15th.
yep, and it'll be here at ESC Park.
Perfect. Thank
Nothing
you.
else. I would say that, again, I was in there for the early voting and for all those volunteers that are there. Again, we appreciate what they
Yep.
do and
Yep.
you all trying to host.
We had fun with them, that's
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good group. So
Yeah.
great. Thank you for all you do.
Thank
and
you.
what you will do for the county as well.
Thank you.
Help us get another strong person like yourself in that role.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comments. The public is invited to address the council with comments or concerns. The public is invited to comment with a limited 3 minutes per individual. You are required to sign in at the podium and required to adhere to Troutman Policy 51, which is governing comments from the town of Troutman at our meetings. We also still have folks who, since we've gone to live stream, they're welcome to comment via chat or send a letter to our clerk with no more than 350, actually, I'm sorry, with any letter that they can send to our clerk prior to. So first I'll ask Michael if there's anything on our live stream.
No, sir, not this time.
Okay. Is there anything from the clerk? Okay. Anyone here at the public want to comment, address the council? Okay. Thank you. We will now move into our old business.
Wasn't there mentioned Monday about some letters that were to be?
There will be an appropriate section for that particular letter when that is opened up for the public.
Right.
We will now move into old business. Thank you. First item and only item in old business is a rezoning request, which is CZRM 2201. It is Troutman Towns, a request for conditional zoning for the property located at the east side of South Eastway Drive. It's near the intersection of Highway 21. The pins are referenced in your agenda. It is to rezone 24 plus or minus acres from town residential to conditional zoning, mixed residential for the purpose of a townhome development. I will now open this public hearing and turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to point out before we get started with this that this is old business because this is an item that at last month's meeting the applicant requested a deferral and the mayor and council recommended that this any changes that the applicant has or new site plan that they produce be taken back to the planning board. So that was done at the request of council. But as you stated, Mr. Mayor, the applicant is Touche LLC, and the name of this project is Troutman Towns. The property that we're considering is located on the northeast side of South Eastway Drive. It's a mouthful. It's currently zoned RT, which is town residential. And this property is in our town limits, so there was not an annexation with this evening. However, there is a small tract that will have to be annexed as part of this if approved. This is in our ETJ, so we do have zoning authority over it, and we can rezone it this evening without that piece being annexed. We will be doing that at a later date. Again, this was sent back to the planning board for review by council at last month's meeting. What is being requested this evening is the council consider a new site plan that's been revised for the 24 acres that will allow the development of the property to be developed for 96 townhome units. The property that we're considering this evening is highlighted in red on the screen. I believe you all have that in your packet as well. You can see the parcels outlined there. The one that I mentioned that is not currently in the town is right here, and that will need to be annexed again. It is in our ETJ, so we can rezone it. This is a copy of the revised plan that was submitted to the planning board. As you can see, it consists of 96 units. There's 14.65 acres of open space, and one of the major changes made to the plan was that these units now include 2-car garages. That was something that the planning board felt very strongly about, so the applicant went back to the drawing board and has provided that on this plan. A TIA was required, excuse me, as part of this project. The original plan that was submitted to staff included 184 units. That is not the plan that was shown to the planning board originally, but that is the plan that the TIA was based on. So the TIA was based on worst case scenario on this property. The AM and PM trips there, AM was 86 trips, PM was 102. You can see that the revised plan at 96 units cuts those trips in half, both AM and PM. Also, with this new revised site plan, the applicant submitted a set of revised conditions that they have agreed to and would like the council to consider as part of this approval. Again, they've reduced the site plan from 165, which is the plan that was presented to planning board, to 96 units. That's a reduction in density from 6.9 to 3.99, which does bring the plan into compliance with our land use plan, which designates this site as medium density residential, which is 3 to 4 units per acre. There's an increase in the undisturbed nature preserve area from 2.37 acres to 4.35. There's also been a reduction in the need for stormwater quality measures on the site, so the number of ponds has been reduced as well. There's also an increase in open space from a little over 11 acres to about 14 and a half. They've also added some duplex units. So these are not all just multi-unit townhome buildings, but there's also some duplexes included. And again, as I mentioned on the last slide with the site plan revisions, the units will be wider because there will be 2-car garages included. There also will be a further separation of the townhomes that back up to Southeast Way from that road. That was something that the planning board had concerns with. Just knowing the future of that right-of-way and Highway 21, that it's going to be widened in the future. They were concerned with the proximity of those proposed units to the street, so the applicant has moved those. They've also provided larger pockets of community green space throughout the development. So the planning board heard this on May the 23rd. At that time, they did recommend approval, which is a reversal of the original recommendation. They are recommending approval with the conditions that were submitted by the applicant that I just reviewed with you, but they also had some additional conditions that the applicant did agree to, which I'll just share those with you very quickly. The first one is that they wanted to make sure that shutters would be provided on all the windows, not just the front of the units, but also on the rear, especially the rear of the units that face Southeast Way, so that they were attractive from the outside. They wanted to ensure that language that discusses buffer plantings, they wanted to make sure that the minimum planting caliper would meet the town's UDO requirements. 4.35 acres of open space, they wanted to make sure that remained undisturbed with the exception of the installation of utilities and the removal of any invasive species. And through that discussion, the planning board was concerned that if vegetation was removed, they wanted to make sure it was replaced. They also wanted to make sure that the applicant was contacting staff when this was done. So the applicant agreed to only remove invasive species. If trees were removed, that they would be replaced. And that is something that the applicant has agreed to work with staff on. So based on all of this information, as well as planning board's recommendation, staff has also reversed our recommendation as well, and we are now recommending approval based on 3 things: that the reduction in density meets the future land use map's designation for the property of 4 units per acre, that the underlying zoning district is RT, and that is a district that would allow a density of 4 units per acre. So basically what's being proposed is in compliance with the underlying zoning of RT, where they could have 4 units per acre of single family. That's one significant difference, but the density would be similar. Also, if developed under RT zoning, the amount of open space required would only be 20%. As currently shown on the proposed plan that they're showing you this evening, open space is at 57%. Again, you all have several options before you this evening. You can rezone this request as presented. You also have the ability to discuss additional conditions with the applicant if you choose to do so. You can choose to deny this application. You can choose to rezone it to a different zoning category, or you can defer the request. That's the end of staff's presentation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address those. And the applicant is here this evening and has a presentation they would like to share with you as well.
Okay. We'll allow the applicant to share their comments.
Mayor Young, Town Council, I'm Paul Pinnell with Urban Design Partners, here to represent Touche LLC. I'm here with Michael Fess, who is a member of Touche LLC. I'd like to start the meeting publicly by thanking Lynn for all of your guidance in past months and also your exceptionally thorough presentation. I feel like I don't have very much to talk about at this point, but I'll do my best. The resolution is really poor, Lynn. I'm not sure what's happening here, but this is an exceptionally grainy photo of Southeast Way Drive of the existing site. I think we're probably all familiar with it. We can probably use our imagination. Lynn previously had shared a lot of the information that we're going to share tonight. I'll just quickly go through the existing site directly adjacent Southeast Way Drive. As you're heading into town, it's the right-hand turn on Southeast Way. The site is almost immediately to your right. Within the town limits, Lynn had mentioned that there is a small portion of property here that will need to go through annexation. I believe that may be considered next council meeting. And then also an example of the existing zoning here today, which is R2, and then RT. We are requesting CZRM at this location for 96 townhomes. As Lynn had previously alluded to, this had originally started out at 186. There's been quite the dramatic reduction in density on site based on feedback and design considerations that we've received from staff, community members, and really planning board. We had our meeting with them 2 months ago, and they had some very hearty feedback for us. We took a pause, reconsidered the site, took the feedback, and made some rather significant dramatic changes to the site plan. When we originally had submitted, town staff was not in, they were in opposition to the plan. Of course, there was a planning board vote, unanimous vote of recommendation of denial. We wanted to change that, and utilizing planning board's feedback, I think we did a good job. So we can share some of those changes with you tonight, which Lynn has already done. This was the original plan that we shared planning board a few months back. As you can see, quite significant amount of additional density here. This is the rendered site plan associated with that site plan that we had submitted. So just to run through a few of the major items that have changed: a reduction of 165 units to 96, 6.9 DUA to 3.99 DUA, bringing it into compliance with the underlying RT zoning district, an increase in the undisturbed nature preserve area from 2.37 up to 4.35. We've reduced the amount of stormwater quality. Basically, it's a direct correlation to how much impervious area we were proposing on site. Since that's been greatly reduced, the need for so much stormwater detention on site has been reduced as well. The open space on site, this is just a touch over 24 acres. The open space that's required on site is 10%. So 2.4 acres is actually what's required, and we're proposing 14.5 acres of open space. That's not all undisturbed open space, but it's 14.5 acres of some form of open space on site. We've increased the total number of duplex units on site. One of the main components that came back, or one of the biggest feedback really, was the amount of parking that was being made available. These were previously one car garage, one driveway, one parking space in the driveway townhome units. These townhomes have been widened to accommodate a 2-car garage and also a driveway for 2 parking spaces. Those commitments have been made within the current development conditions. We've also increased the separation from Eastway Drive, anticipating a future widening of Eastway Drive one day when NCDOT has some funds to do some road work. At least that dimension will be there to accommodate that future widening. We've combined some of our community green spaces on site, which were smaller in nature from the previous plan, and we've combined them into larger areas so they're more usable. And those are the major components that we've made changes to. This is the existing site plan, which we submitted to staff a few weeks back, and a rendering associated with that. So if you have any questions, it may be a little easier on the eyes for us to take a look and discuss this site plan. The TIA, which Randy Goddard with DRG assisted us with, we took a look at all of the potential intersections which may need a little help within a half mile here. These are the locations that were studied, and previously, when we initially submitted, there was a requirement for a TIA, given the density. Well, that reduction in density now has removed the need for a TIA to be required. However, the one requirement that resulted in the TIA was a mitigation for a 100-foot turn lane, or 100 feet of storage on Highway 21 at the right turn at Southeast Way Drive. Even though a TIA is currently not required based on the current 96 units, the Touche LLC has agreed to let the mitigation remain in the development conditions. So the need for constructing that right turn lane on Highway 21, while it may not be required, we're committing to do it anyways. So regardless, that's still there. Just some of the suggested build improvements associated with this. Again, the primary one is a 100-foot storage right turn lane on Highway 21 on Southeast Way Drive. A wire diagram showing the improvements associated with the petition. And then also, we wanted to provide some precedent images of what the townhomes would look like here. We can talk a little bit more about the materials. We have committed to specific materials, including wood, stone, cementitious stone, synthetic stone. So we can go through some of those if you have any questions regarding what has been committed to within the development conditions. But we wanted to provide a precedent image of what the townhomes would potentially look like here. And with that, I will open it up to any questions you may have. Actually, Michael, do you have any additional items you would like to add? I know you maybe have met with some of the adjacent property owners that may be beneficial for council to hear
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. Just some history of all the changes in the design. So we, not only do we have our meeting here with residents, we also reached out to a lot of the adjacent homeowners and got their feedback, those that didn't come to our meeting. And so, for example, Mr. Motley, who lives adjacent behind us, he wanted to see a fence. He was worried about people entering his property from the rear of ours. So we voluntarily added a fence along the back side of the property based on his concerns. So just want to go and just reiterate the fact that we came here, we wanted to work with the town, the staff, the residents to come up with a quality development with input from all the community.
Right. Thank you. Council, you've heard from staff and the current developer for Touche, from Touche LLC and Troutman Towns. Any questions for them before we open it up to the public?
The question I have is, I was at the planning and zoning meeting, the original one, and they asked about reducing the number of townhomes, and I remember you making a statement that around that gravity feed sewer line, that any reduction would take that out because you needed all of those to do that. Are you still doing that?
So with the gravity feed, we're still researching it. So not all of the right-of-way has been obtained. There's 3 other developers involved that are also, so we're coordinating efforts with them on that. So we were also told by one of the planning board members that since we didn't control all of it, that we shouldn't even discuss it. So, but it's one of the things we are working with, but there are other developers involved that have property under contract that are also working towards that solution.
Other questions or comments?
So, my question, well, not really a question, kind of a statement, but a reiteration. So there are 3 exits, Field Street, Eastway, and that's it.
So great question, thank you, yes. So the primary entry is along this proposed public street on Southeast Way. There's a secondary entrance off of Field Drive. And then also, it's worth noting that we've committed to providing an emergency access easement from the end of this proposed street. You can see it faintly here, you've got some dashed lines here. And this would provide emergency access to the rear of the development in the instance that for some reason, maybe this street is blocked. There will still be emergency access for emergency vehicles to be able to access the development. It will not look like a street, but it's a product potentially called grass pave, where you put in a structurally rigid paver that grass actually grows up through it. So when you look at it, it will look like a lawn. But at least emergency vehicles will know that that access drive is there and they can just pull right on through if the time ever arises.
Is there any, like, ongoing maintenance with,
So really, the ongoing maintenance for something like that would be to just mow it. It will look like lawn.
okay.
Yep.
The 100-foot backup right turn lane you're talking about, would that be completed by the time you start selling units?
It would be, that's a great question. I need to remember how we wrote that in the development conditions. I can't remember if it would be completed prior to the first certificate of occupancy. I think it is. I believe it's in there as prior to the first certificate, but I would need to look at the development conditions to see what certificate of occupancy would be issued related to the right turn lane.
Now, the right turn lane is zoned up at Rumpel Street.
Let's see
Right.
here. The right turn lane, let's see, so here's Highway 21 going into town. This is the right turn on Eastway. So the storage would actually be on Highway 21, just before you get to Southeast Way
So be
Drive.
back out on 21.
That's correct, yep.
Towards the interstate.
It will be on the right side of the road as if you're going into town. So anyone that wants to turn right on Southeast Way will be able to merge, and there'll be 100 feet of storage before you get to Southeast Way Drive to make a right-hand turn. What that will do is it'll allow traffic on Highway 21 to continue to move through that intersection without any slowdown.
Talking, between Interest Eastway and the Missionary Baptist Church.
Okay, that's what I want.
Other questions for the applicant or staff?
I was just going to say, I do have an answer to Mr. Harris's question about the timing of that turn lane. I don't think a time frame was placed into the development conditions that I see, so that's something that you all may want to consider adding and including in any conditions of approval.
Okay, so there's nothing in there about that right now?
Not currently, but you all can add it. I mean, there is a condition about the construction of the right turn lane, yes. There's just no time frame attached to it as to when that has to happen.
I would certainly like to see something reasonable. 1 or 2 units being sold is not going to make that much difference, but, you get to a number to where it can be a little bit of introduction, especially rush hour. I'd like to, morning and evening.
If I can, so NCDOT, if this were a development where they were taking over the roads, they would require the lesser of either 50 units completed CO or half of the total. So with 96 units, we would be seeing half that, so 48 units. So by the 48th CO, we would then, the turn lane must be completed and accepted with the certificate of built to the standards of NCDOT.
So CO, half of that, I think you said 40
Yeah.
and some change.
Yeah, 40 and
COs,
change.
then by
Yep.
state standard.
We would be
requested
required to have that in
have
place.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you willing to
That's
live
fine.
with the 48?
Well, and I'll go with the state, the state standard. If that's what their requirement is, then I will certainly go by their
Are
standard.
you willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
And if I can reiterate or drill down a little bit more on the gravity sewer. So we're committed to working with the town to make sure this has adequate sewer. So, and usually that's done during the CDs or the engineering process to make sure that happens. So, when we go into design, we'll be absolutely committed to doing that.
That is certainly something that, when you first proposed this months ago, that caught my ear very significantly, and I certainly hope it works out, that you get the right of ways that are required to do this.
So that would be a big improvement for our wastewater system down in that part of town.
I absolutely agree. And like I said, we're still in conversation with other developers who do currently have most of that land under contract. So it's in the works, but they haven't submitted anything to the town at this point, not even sketch plans, as we're aware of. So we're still working with them, trying to figure out how that's going to work. So,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Nothing else from the staff. Then I will open this up to anyone from the public who would like to comment regarding this particular rezoning request. Please state your name and sign in.
Tanya Bartlett. And my only question is, why can we not have an entrance on 21 instead of both of those entrances on Eastway? That is going to put a lot of traffic on that road, and we all know that we've got at least 20 years until the North Carolina Department of Transportation is going to even look anywhere near Troutman past Highway 150 and Highway 73. I'm very uncomfortable with that number.
Okay.
So that is my one question statement. And I would like for the town to make that a requirement in the building of these properties so that they have a way to get to 21 other than just Eastway.
So your question is, how can they get an entrance?
I don't know why that wasn't already addressed. It seems to me, I don't know why that would not have
Yeah,
already
so
been
I don't know that they own the property, so, but,
Well, it looks like they're purchasing the
But-
property.
but
or
I'll-
isn't it?
Let me come up to the microphone so folks online can hear me. So the reason why there is no connection directly to Highway 21 is because we need to follow horizontal design guidelines that NCDOT dictates. So with the existing intersection of South Eastway Drive and Highway 21, the inclusion of additional public street directly to Highway 21 is not allowed by NCDOT due to the proximity of two public roads that close together. It's just not allowable, so we're following NCDOT design guidelines, and this is the direction that we've been provided.
okay, thank you.
Great, wonderful. So then my suggestion would be, we need a light. They need to provide a light. We have no way to get off Eastway with the amount of traffic we have now. Already taking a left off of Eastway onto Highway 21 is horrible. Put a light there. It'll fix it. I mean, I am 100% love the fact, I would love to see townhomes. I am 100% loving the idea of having them. I just know what Eastway's like already, and right now, Eastway is already overly congested. People are already using it as a highway that it is not, trying to get around Main Street in the mornings, myself included. I will end up being hit by somebody at some point because they fly around the Mad Monkey Garage at 100 miles an hour trying to miss that traffic from this entrance. So if we add another 80 people in the morning or 80 people in the afternoon or 106, whatever it was, I can only imagine. My daughter already won't take a left-hand turn. She only wants to take rights. She's only 15 learning how to drive. She is terrified to take a left-hand turn out of Eastway. So my suggestion is, I love the idea. Great, bring them on. Put us a light.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Other questions or comments from the public? All right, council, I will now close this public hearing, and I will ask if there's any questions or comments that you'd like to entertain in regards to any of the comments before we move on to the approval.
I have a couple that I'd like, one is that I remember being on this town, on the planning and zoning board a few years ago, and we had this come before us to zone it as town residential and annex it. I don't remember any neighbors complaining to putting that small group of houses they were gonna put in that area to make it look like the whole neighborhood. But for whatever reason, they didn't do it. Now they're coming back now and wanting to like quadruple what they were doing. And several neighbors at the other meetings were here complaining. And so that was a concern I have about them, that from the homeowners, not the developers, but that why did they not follow through when we zoned it for them before and approved through council and everybody? The other is, meeting with the Land Use Advisory Committee, the planning, that map. One of the things that came out of that was a need for a text amendment, which we've discussed with Lynn Hare, that gives a description for open space. We were kind of led to believe that it was state law that we had to get these developers count this space, like they got a creek over here, and their calculations how much land, how many houses they could put in, and they don't really, according to may not be state law. We're looking at maybe changing the amendment, and I just have a concern that here's another one with a creek that's undevelopable that we're adding as open space, and they couldn't build on it anyhow. So I have a concern that this number, yeah, it may look good, they reduced it, but I don't know if they reduced it enough.
Probably, we'll cover that as well. Any other questions or
I
comments?
would like to hear, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask the developers, is it feasible and cost-wise that you guys could put a light in there?
Go ahead, yeah, sure. So we ran the original traffic impact study with 184 units, 185 units. It did not indicate a signal was needed at that intersection. So the way NCDOT works is there has to meet certain warrants to have a traffic signal installed. And the TIA, with almost double the amount of units that we're requesting, said it wasn't required. The only thing that was required was a right turn lane. So to get approval from NCDOT, it probably wouldn't happen. I can almost say it won't meet the warrant analysis required by NCDOT to install that traffic signal. So there's been other projects very similar to this that the town requested, but NCDOT said, no, we can't do it. And the TIA would have indicated, the traffic impact analysis would have indicated if a traffic signal or that intersection met the requirements. And that was with double the amount of units.
So even if North Carolina DOT said, no, you couldn't, it wouldn't be feasible then?
Yeah.
Even
It couldn't be
cost-wise.
installed. It could not, or cost-wise, anything. So if the TIA said, yes, a traffic signal is warranted there, then we would have committed to it. But at this point, DOT would deny a traffic signal there. And our TIA, our traffic impact analysis, even with double the amount of trips that we're proposing, it didn't meet the requirements for a warrant.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't mean to bring up a different situation, but we're very familiar with that with the intersection not too far from here that, in the past, the town's even offered to pay for the cost of doing it, and DOT turned us down, so. But I guess starting on dot now. I'm sure you'll have applied, but I understand, okay, but Eddie got my question, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Just for council's information, the warrants that he's talking about, and to remind you all of previous discussions, anytime there's a TIA and we want intersection improvements, there's a list of warrants that North Carolina Department of Transportation has to approve, regardless of what we have been asking for as a town, or as the Mayor Pro Tem said, willing to be able to pay. That typically is a set of 8 warrants. We have another guest here who actually happens to be on one of the transportation committees and can verify that's, as much as we may want and request, it still is a main road that the state of North Carolina is over. And even if we all agree and want it, DOT still got to have the final approval. But as the applicant said, it's now half the units of what the TIA that went through and was discussed with DOT. So I certainly don't see them reversing their course and say, add a traffic signal at this time. The intersection that you all alluded to is a lot more busy than that one, and they've denied it.
Any other questions or comments before I close the public hearing? Okay. All right, I will now declare this public hearing closed. Council, you've heard from the staff, you've heard from the applicant as well as the public. There's been some agreed upon changes here. At this time, I will ask, is there any consideration for the approval of ordinance 1122, titled an ordinance changing the zoning classification of the after described property from town residential RT to conditional zoning, mixed residential RM, at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I will, so move
So,
approval of ordinance 11-22, titled an ordinance changing the zoning classification of the after described property from town residential RT to conditional zoning mixed residential CZRM.
okay, so there is a motion on the floor to approve the approval of ordinance 1122. Is there a second to the motion? Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Hearing no second, assume it fails, which is ultimately a denial, if I'm correct. And I don't know what's the process if this applicant wants to move forward in the future.
They would have to wait the amount of time that the ordinance specifies before the request can be brought to you all again, unless there's significant changes made. Also, I believe there's still, even if a denial is the motion made by the council, we still need to do a statement of reasonableness.
Okay,
And the time frame is 1 year.
1 year, great. So the motion failed to receive a second, ultimately a denial. At this time, we will consider a statement of consistency. Is there such a statement? And if so, please read that statement. And there would have to be a statement. Didn't get. Can you put those back up? Do you have them? I don't know if you.
I believe I had the statement of approval from
Oh,
the
just-
planning
just-
board.
Okay, you
Just
don't
kinda-
have the consistency
I do
statement.
not.
Okay.
There's
Thank
one in
you.
your packet that kind of gives you some guidelines if you want to use that as to help
Okay.
you.
All right, council, what's your options here?
So what are we looking for now?
So there has to be a statement, the
Okay, so-
motion failed, so there has to be a reason for why it failed. And it should be based on this statement of consistency.
Okay, then, I'll make a motion of the consistency of why this was, failed was, one was because it's recently had been rezoned to town residential and the community was all in favor of it. The other is a complaint around the traffic, getting in and off of Southeast Way at that close junction to 21. And that if you've driven Fields Creek, that is really not the way to bring people out of that neighborhood either. So I would make the traffic issue being a reason for that, plus the rezoning 3-4 years ago.
I'll make sure that based on what we all heard, legal advice, are we good with that statement?
Really an inconsistency statement instead of consistency statement. The reasons for it are potentially valid. Resident body, land use plan, the traffic, and the fact that it was rezoned already recently.
Okay. So consistent with our
guess-
land use plan, but inconsistent based on traffic and the fact that it was rezoned prior.
Okay, that's what I meant to say.
All right. So there's a motion on the floor regarding our statement of consistency. Is there a second? Motion is made, received a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposition? At least hearing none, I would say it passed. The statement of consistency is, again, according to, as we stated, consistent that it does follow the land use, but is inconsistent with the traffic and prior rezoning request. So with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is new business.
There's a question over here about if everybody voted. If you did not vote, then it would be an affirmative vote.
That's correct.
Since we heard nobody say no, then it would be 5.
That's correct.
affirmative.
That's how I assumed it.
Okay. Just trying to make sure.
Yeah. I think all council understands if, whether they say yay or nay, it's a affirmative vote if they don't signify. Next item is new business. Annexation request AX 2207, non-contiguous. Applicant is Jenny Honeycutt Barkley. The executor is Piedmont Land Co. LLC. The pins are provided in your packet. It's the Houston Road Development. I will now open this public hearing and turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a request for annexation. The request is to annex 91.275 acres located on Houston Road, right near the I-77. It's not an interchange, but it's near I-77. The applicant is Jenny Honeycutt Barkley. The executor of that property is Piedmont Land Co. This property is currently located in unincorporated Iredell County. It's got 3 different zoning classifications on it. It's GB, HB, and RB in the county, and staff is recommending approval of this request. This annexation does coincide with the rezoning case that we will hear immediately following this annexation.
Okay.
You want to go through, want to present, or do you want to?
And that's the end of staff's presentation on the
Okay,
annexation.
Thank you. Any question for Ms. Hare regarding this annexation request? Okay. Any comment from the public regarding this annexation request?
Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm Nathan Duggins, members of Town Council. I'm an attorney with Tuggle Duggins. We are here on behalf of the applicant. With me tonight is Teddy Hull with Collett. I wonder if we can get the PowerPoint up. We've got a presentation that's both for the annexation and for the
Rezoning?
For the rezoning,
Okay.
yes, sir. So if it's the council's pleasure, I can go through our presentation.
Okay.
If that's what we like, that y'all like for us to do. I'm going to ask Mr. Hull to come up. Sorry, I just saw a dog walking around outside. Threw me for a minute. I'm going to ask Mr. Hull to come up in a second, but I wanted to introduce a couple other folks. Michael Newman, our civil engineer, is here. Answer any questions about any civil questions that the town council may have. Chase Smith with Ramey Kemp, traffic engineer, is also here to answer any questions. I may make an attempt to answer some questions as well. And Grant Miller, who's the broker who's been involved in the property, is also here. But I'm going to first ask Mr. Hull to come up, walk through a couple slides, talk about Collett in general and their development opportunities in other parts of the state and in the southeast, and then I'll come back up and talk about the application itself.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff. Thank you for your time this evening. As Nathan mentioned, my name is Teddy Hall. I'm a development partner at Collett Industrial. Our team is based in Charlotte, and we focus on the development of Class A industrial properties across the southeast. To date, we've developed approximately 2.5 million square feet that's either been completed or is under construction currently. We have a heavy focus in the Carolinas due to really strong transportation infrastructure and population growth. And because of that, areas like Troutman, with its population growth and connectivity to the interstate, is a key focus of ours. Our platform is part of the broader Collet umbrella. Collet's also based and headquartered in Charlotte, and is a full-service commercial real estate firm with development, property management, accounting, and brokerage. Collet has over 30 years in the industry and has developed over 20 million square feet across the southeast and the southwest. To give you a sense for the types of projects that we work on at Collet Industrial, here's a snapshot of recently completed or under construction projects. We pursue speculative or build-to-suit facilities that range in size from single building properties of about 50 to 150,000 square feet up to larger industrial parks that include upwards of 600 or 700,000 square feet across multiple buildings. To give you a sense, this here is a project we recently completed in Asheville. That is a 90,000 square foot distribution center. The tenant there is Lowe's Home Improvement. Again, as far as a larger project in Greensboro, North Carolina, we're under construction on a 3-building industrial park of about 620,000 square feet. We take a lot of pride in the product that we ultimately deliver. And so to give you a sense for what that typically looks like, here are a few examples. This is the project I mentioned in Greensboro that was recently completed. Here's the project, another angle in Asheville as well. And here's a project that we're under construction on currently in Greenville, South Carolina. We take a lot of time and effort in designing these. And we always pursue Class A type products in terms of tilt wall construction, concrete construction, with paint schemes, reveals embedded into the panels themselves to put a good product together. And it's something that we stand behind in every project that we work on. Again, to give you a sense, we use a concrete slab with structural steel components, which are really the demand of the highest quality tenants in today's market. And so, thank you for your time and consideration of this project. I'll now turn it back over to Nathan to walk you through what it is we're proposing tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. So our zoning and annexation request, and again, we're going to try to handle this together tonight. There's 3 parcels on Houston Road, one on the north, or two on the north, one on the south, just east of Interstate 77, approximately 91.8 acres. It's currently zoned rural, agricultural, highway business, and general business, and we're seeking a conditional zoning heavy industrial. One thing that we wanted to mention, and I don't know if this was up here earlier, but this is the site. You can see Houston Road kind of bisecting the parcels there. And then, of course, the interstate access is off of Houston Road onto Highway 21 and just to the south there. One of the things we wanted to lift up to the town council this evening is that the future land use map really, that was prepared by this council and your staff, calls for heavy industrial use on this site. So we think this is consistent, this use and this rezone and annexation is consistent with the town's interest in moving heavy industrial to the east and developing good industrial warehouse manufacturing space, both on the west side of 77, but also on the east side of 77. This is a concept plan. I'm sorry, this is a little fuzzy, but you can see that 2 of the buildings are contemplated on the north side of Houston, on the north side of Houston Road, and then one of the buildings on the south side of Houston. We have talked with staff about connectivity back down to 21 on the south side of this the parcel that sits on the south side of Houston, and we are having some discussions with the property owner that owns the property that's just due south of the parcel to the south, and we agree that some connectivity might be feasible in the future, but there is a Duke power easement that runs through the site, and so I think the site of where the connectivity would occur is going to have to be a process of negotiation between the landowners. This is the concept plan in the north. So you see the two buildings. Again, this is the north side of Houston. And then this is the concept plan to the south. And you can see the stub road there that might ultimately connect down to Highway 21. We know traffic is a concern. And what you see here is in red improvements that we've agreed to make that are off-site that I hopefully will address some of the traffic concerns. The improvements in blue are improvements, and I recognize this isn't happening as quickly as everybody would like, but the improvements in blue are where Houston Road and Flower House Road are going to be aligned or misaligned right now, where that improvement is going to happen. And I know NCDOT is confident that's going to really improve some of the traffic flow in the 21 corridor. We talk a lot about traffic data comparison, and of course there was a TIA that was prepared by Ramey Kemp in preparation for this application. And what we were trying to present to the council here in this presentation is kind of a worst case, probably a middle case of what we're talking about here. A mixed manufacturing and warehousing would produce about 2,300 daily traffics, but an all warehouse use would be about 1,200. So that's a real step down, and we think the more likely scenario is probably an all warehouse use. What's notable about our request that's before the council tonight is that the current use, meaning that what's in the county, the traffic counts are almost twice this. So current build out, if it stayed in the county, is almost twice. I think it's about 4,500 daily traffic counts. So we think this is essentially a down zone from a traffic perspective. And obviously, both the warehouse use and the mixed manufacturing and warehouse use would generate a fair number of jobs in the eastern part of your city. We talked about economic benefits. This is just an estimate of what we think would be an increase in the tax base. You see the Troutman real estate property tax increase of about $182,000. The Iredell County tax increase of about $220,000. And that doesn't include what the personal property tax increase might contemplate for equipment in the building, other things that are purchased and put into use in the building. So we think in terms of economic benefits, the increase to your tax base is going to be significant. So in summary, we think we've got a very good development for this for the town. We've got a very experienced developer who's developed over 20 million square feet of warehouse and manufacturing facilities. We think it's going to be very positive in terms of economic benefits to the community, and of course it's consistent with your future land use plan. As I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, we've got a number of experts here who can speak to traffic, who can speak to civil. Mr. Hull can come back up and talk about other questions the council may have about the proposed annexation and rezoning. But we appreciate your time here tonight and look forward to receiving any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff or the applicant regarding the annexation request?
I have a question to our town manager, and that would be that at the planning and zoning, the largest conflict from their yes versus no vote was the Flower House Loop and Houston Road, and what would happen, this would happen before that happened, and that was going on like that, and we made a comment about the agreement Rocky Creek and Troutman Logistics have made, that once it starts to be work out there, they'll all pull their money. And it was asked, is that possible that you would talk to this company about doing the same thing, and so that when we start to work, that we get them all done? And obviously we can't make the timing perfect, but we can at least get it all done together.
Yes, sir, Mr. Harris, Councilman Harris, I apologize. I met with a couple of Collett folks, and we discussed that and what that meant when we discussed it at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. They too, or whichever the town prefers, whether it be a pool of money for the improvements that they're required to make, so that we can partner up with the other two builders and do them all at one time for a better completed project. They're willing to work with the town in whichever capacity you all prefer. As was discussed, basically from estimations, nothing is written in stone, but once this process starts, if approved by you all, it's theoretically possible these buildings or a building will be available in use a year before DOT has told us the realignment of those intersections would occur. That's why it would make more sense to actually pool the money together until that realignment occurred, instead of asking them to build a turning lane and then that be ripped up or destroyed to then be realigned later.
Okay, so we have had that discussion.
Yes, sir, and I've had it with their,
Because that
them
was
as
a
a group.
concern, was if we do it all, and hopefully DOT will work with us, and we will be as close to lining it up with the buildings, whichever buildings open up, or the housing at the same time. And that was the biggest drawback, if I remember.
Yes, sir, and we don't have anything that we can provide in writing from DOT, but I have also spoken with them, and because there's so many projects in this particular area, if it were possible, what they said they would like to mandate this style of pooling the money together instead of piecemealing projects that then don't look as what they were intended.
And so with all three of them pulled together, we have a better chance of getting out there what we've been wanting all along, that we weren't able to do it from the city.
Yes, sir, with the extra traffic signals, turning lanes, the longer turn lanes, the whole nine.
Good, thank you.
So any other questions regarding the annexation request?
The only thing that concerns me is just the timing. It appears even if you offer to pay for something, it still can be delayed. And, you know, it scares me a little bit, you know, even with the realignment of Houston and Flower House. That was supposed to have been done 2 years ago. And we're still looking at that now, 2025. You know, what's gonna happen? And that, you know, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not making any declarations or anything, but it just disappoints me that we can't get better results with something being paid for from State Department of Transportation as to when, you know, these can go ahead and be done sooner rather than later, or at the whims of, you know, someone out of Raleigh. So, you know, again, I'm thinking out loud, not making any declarations or statements or anything like that, but it does concern me. I mean, all these things sound good when they're once in place.
I understand.
But that depends on the cooperation of a state agency.
I understand. And I would note to the council, our condition actually contemplates what Mr. Wyatt just outlined, that we would either build it or make the contribution, depending on what was best under the circumstances. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
I do have one question.
Absolutely.
Pardon, Mr. Mayor.
It's the annexation?
I
Okay.
can't read what's on the screen.
Okay.
Bottom right.
Yeah, so oh gosh. I know the red says improvement by developers, by developer.
The last one says storage.
Yeah, and the last one does say store.
The bottom right, sorry, bottom left, apologies.
Oh, left.
I used to know the difference.
Oh,
Signals. It's a.
Coordinated signals, yes.
Coordinated signals.
Yes, they
Signals,
coordinate the
yeah.
signals that are in the red. See the two signals that are in the red? I think our traffic engineer is indicating that signals will be coordinated.
Thanks, I just need new contacts.
No, I do, as do I, apparently.
Yeah.
Now, those signals are a part of the TIA then?
Yes,
right?
sir.
So, okay, all right.
Any other questions, comments regarding the annexation?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the public regarding this request? Please state your name and sign in.
Alan Hales. My biggest concern is traffic and all the things y'all have just discussed, and we know, I mean, to sit here and think NCDOT is going to do something next year or 5 years from now, it'll be a disaster before they do anything. My biggest concern about this project is they've talked traffic studies and trips, daily trips and all that. Nobody said the word tractor trailer. The tractor trailer traffic will be terrible. We know what they weigh, we know how slow they move. Instead of 10 cars getting through a stoplight cycle, you might have one, maybe two trucks get through. So traffic is going to be terrible. Tractor trailers needs to be considered as a trip. It's way different than some lady getting in a car and driving to work or something. It's just a total different animal. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is John Kinley. I represent the sellers. I'm with Equity Commercial Properties. 25 years ago, I went to the county. Lynn Sherrill owned that property along Houston Road, and we got it rezoned to GB about 25 years ago, and we subdivided. I even wrote the deed restrictions into the property there. We called it Park 42. And we've gone along there and built pre-engineered metal buildings along through there. I own 3 of them on Houston Road, as a matter of fact, today. You've got an opportunity here. We've worked with this Call It and their folks, and they're professional. I've been doing this for 42 years, so I've worked with a lot of different developers over the years. These guys are first class, and they're wanting to build Class A buildings. This is an opportunity for the town to annex that property and be a part of that. There's a great demand for more land for pre-engineered metal buildings. And if tonight you don't go along with this, I've got a list of prospects that want to buy the property and would like to continue with metal buildings down there. I think it would be a travesty if the town did not get a first-class developer that does Class A development. Thank you.
John, you mind signing in?
I did.
Oh, thank you. Any other public like to comment?
Do I need to sign in again?
No, you can say your name. You
Tanya
sign in.
Bartlett. And I know Mr. Kinley, and I've spoke to him multiple times myself. And I know he does a lot of stuff here, and I think it's great. I love the fact that we're bringing in businesses. But again, it goes back to the roads. These tractor trailers are destroying our roads already, the ones that are coming in from Walmart, the ones that are coming in from the one right down here on Murdoch. We haven't even seen what's going to happen with this other one. Guys, our roads are already getting destroyed. Do we really need more trucks? Those trucks put an entrance onto Houston Road, onto the interstate. I don't know. Something where they're not driving through the middle of town, coming into our town. I don't know what the distance has to be, but obviously it can be done because it's been done many other times. People buy land and they want to build houses. Well, they throw up an exit ramp somewhere so that they can do that. Well, you've got lots of money, do it. If you really want to come here and you want to build all these distribution centers, which, great, wonderful, come on, do it. But don't kill our traffic doing it. I mean, do not make it so that we can't get through town and we can't live here in peace. And right now, all these people who want to come in and bring your distribution centers, you're tearing up our towns, and we don't want it. The people who live here do not want it. Again, I say, if they want to build, put up an entrance ramp to the interstate so they can get on in Houston, and that's the way their traffic needs to go. Not through our town, destroying our roads. And I'm so glad that that person in our town has decided to tell people what not to tell council that you've spoke to, because I thought that was pretty rude earlier. Not those people are not here, but I just wanted to say that. So anyway, again, tractor trailers, they need to go that way, not through town. Again, we've told them, we've got signs up, they still do it. They're running over the curbs and tearing them up, and we don't want it. The town people do not want it.
Any other comments from the public regarding this annexation request?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name's Howard Bryan. I own Piedmont Land Co. Piedmont Land Co. owns 24 acres of the 91 acres that is being requested for annexation. I'm not involved in the planning of the process. I'm not involved in the planning of the buildings. I'm not involved in the transportation. But I did invest in this property about 10 or 15 years ago. And I invested in this property because the land use plan that was discussed by the general public, by the county, Iredell County, by Troutman Town Commissioners, over a period of numerous months, that land use plan was an attempt to predict where large businesses, distribution, and warehouses should be located. And after many months of study with professionals, paid consultants, and professionals, local people, they all decided that the best place to put these types of businesses was close to the interstate interchange. Now, someone earlier was talking about all these trucks that'll come through downtown Troutman. The reason they won't come through downtown Troutman is this provision or this proposal is as close to an interstate interchange as you can possibly get. There's only one turn when you come on Houston Road in order to get on the interstate. These trucks won't be coming through downtown Troutman. They wouldn't go to Barium Springs. They wouldn't go to Shelton Avenue. They'd be going on and off the interstate highway. When the land use plan was updated several years ago, and it's also true of the Iredell County Horizon Plan, which is a 30-year plan, I think there were 241 acres of property on Houston Road that was designated as future industrial, future heavy business, future commercial business. There were numerous other sites, including down on Highway 21, Charlotte Highway, where some people said, we think that should be industrial because that's close to the interstate. But most of the plans, most of the comments then, most of the support was for retail and for homes, apartments, to be located south of Interstate 77 on Charlotte Highway, but the industrial to be located along Houston Road and continuing on over to Ostwald-Amity Road. So this property was designated, and there have been a number of businesses located there. The Lowe's Planogram building is on Houston Road for the very reason that the county and Troutman decided years ago, this is where we want to put the large buildings, close to the interstate. There was one other question or a comment about, well, why not just build an interchange at Houston Road? Well, the reason you can't do that is that DOT requires, the federal law requires 1 mile between exits on the interstate highway. And Houston Road is right on the borderline of that. When you measure it, it's actually just a few feet less than 1 mile from exit 42. And I'd also point out that DOT already has acquired 3.5 acres of property for a northbound on-ramp at exit 42 on the side where Lowe's is located. So DOT is already planning to do that. DOT is also planning, as has been stated before, the realignment of Flower House Loop and Houston Road. And that is at the present time on the 2025 plan. The 2025 DOT year begins in 2024, October 1 of 2024. And since this project has been delayed a couple of times, it's not delayed because of right-of-way. As you know, DOT has already acquired all but a couple of the 23 pieces of right-of-way that they need for this realignment. It takes a while to put that together, but DOT certainly plans to build that. Our state senator is the chairman of the Transportation Committee. So I would think that Iredell County has somebody speaking for us to make absolutely sure that that realignment stays on schedule. This is the first time Iredell County's had a person on the Transportation Committee, but we have the chairman who resides in this county and speaks for us. And I think we've got an excellent chance to keep that construction on schedule this time. But this is an area we have designated. Troutman has designated this for large industry, for Lowe's planogram, for other large buildings. And it would really be a shame, as Mr. Kenley said, it'd be a shame if Troutman did not take advantage of this opportunity to have first-class, Class A tenants located in Troutman, in the city limits, to provide the jobs that are the most important thing that we can do. You know, a lot of our young folks now move out of the county. They go to work in Charlotte. They go in Winston-Salem. They go to other places. They leave because we don't have the opportunities that they're looking for. So we need to be looking for that, and we need to take advantage in Troutman of this opportunity. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity, some other town will. There's somebody out there who would love to have these people come to their town and spend the millions of dollars that they're talking about spending. So I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, you sign in? Thank you. Any other comments from the public regarding this annexation request? All right, hearing none, I will close this public hearing. Council, you've heard from the applicant as well as from staff and the public regarding this annexation request. Is there consideration for approval of ordinance 1222 titled an ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Troutman non-contiguous?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance 1222, titled an ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Troutman, North Carolina, non-contiguous.
Motion's on the floor to approve the ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made. Any other comment or question? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item is actually on the rezoning request for CZ HI 2205. Colette Group via Toggle Duggins and Piedmont Land Co. request for conditional zoning of the property on the north and south sides of Houston Road at I-77. The plans are provided in your packet, your agenda. It is 91 plus or minus acres from Idaho County, general business to highway business, and rural agriculture to town of Troutman, conditional zoning heavy industrial for the purpose of warehouse distribution center. At this time, I will open this public hearing regarding the rezoning request. Turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you stated, this is the rezoning portion of the annexation that we just heard. The applicant is the Collette Group, and the location of the property in consideration is located on Houston Road at I-77. It's on both sides of Houston Road in that area. Currently, the property is zoned in Iredell County. It's RA, HB, and GB. They're requesting that the property be conditionally zoned to heavy industrial. The conditional zoning of 92 acres will allow for the development of 3 warehouse facilities that total approximately 700,000 square feet. You've seen the site in the annexation, but highlighted in red are the properties that are involved in this annexation request. This is a copy of the current zoning map. You can see the properties highlighted in red are zoned RA, GB, and HB in the county. You can also see that adjacent properties are already zoned for industrial and interchange business. In our UDO, the definition of heavy industrial is that it's a zoning designation that's basically designed for certain commercial and general industrial land uses that include manufacturing, processing, as well as distribution facilities. Typically, these type of things are located along larger roadways or near highway interchanges. I do want to point that this request is based on the submitted concept plan that's in your packet and the conditions that the applicant has provided. This is a copy of the future land use map, I believe that Mr. Dugan's mentioned in the annexation portion of this. You can see all of the areas highlighted in gray are shown as future land use map industrial. The properties that we are considering for rezoning this evening are shown for heavy industrial, which is what the applicant is requesting this evening for a zoning change. Heavy industrial on our land use plan, the definition of the land use for heavy industrial is similar to the zoning, and that accommodates industrial uses on individual tracts, or it could include multiple buildings or an industrial park. Such uses may constitute, the use of larger uses, vehicular traffic, that type of thing. But these uses, again, are similarly located or traditionally located near interstates and larger roadways. This is a copy of the site plan that the applicant provided, the concept plan. You can see the 3 buildings that are proposed. 1 will be on the south side of Houston, 2 are proposed on the north side, and then again, Houston Road runs right down the middle of the site. Conditional zoning, I want to point out that if it's approved, the development will be constructed based on this concept plan that we're sharing with you this evening. That does not mean that they can go out and start building tomorrow. There's still an administrative process that if this is approved, that these plans have to go through. Engineered documents will have to be submitted and approved by the technical review committee of the town, which includes town planning staff as well as our town engineers. A traffic impact analysis was completed on the site by Ramey Kemp. There's a map in your packet. The applicant touched on this briefly in the annexation portion as well, and I'm sure they can answer any questions you may have or further questions you may have about this traffic impact analysis. One thing that this analysis allows us to do is require of the applicant that they install any improvements that the analysis shows, and the applicant has agreed to doing that. I do want to point out, just for information purposes, that in our strategic plan, this is a document that we use whenever we do receive a rezoning request. In that plan, there's a transportation document that shows proposed connections for roadways in the future. These things, when they're drawn on these maps, they're not engineered. A lot of times it's just a line that's shown on the map, and there was such a line, shown on the property here. In this area, and it kind of runs along this power easement. It's a Duke power easement that runs along the property and connects into Highway 21. It is shown as a possible connection. I think the intent of this is to say that the town would like to see a connection between Highway 21 and Houston Road. Where that connection goes, we don't feel like, after looking at this, that is the best location, just because it's very difficult to work with Duke Power. I don't think they're going to allow a roadway through their easement. There's other locations along Highway 21 where there's signals. For instance, right in front of the entrance to the Lowe's Home Improvement by the Sheets, there's a light there. It makes more sense for possibly a road connection to go at that location, or even further down where the charter school is and there's a light there, or even further down in another location. But we feel like there's an opportunity for that on these undeveloped properties as they come before town council in the future. We're sure that will happen. We just feel like that this power easement makes it difficult and probably prohibits that road connection from happening at that location. These are the proposed conditions that the applicant has presented and shared with you this evening that they've agreed to, discussed with staff as well as the planning board. We want to point out that this property is not located in a watershed. So again, there is not a watershed permit or any type of approvals for watershed being considered this evening with this application. A community meeting is part of the conditional zoning process. The applicant held a community meeting on May the 2nd here in this room. We did send out the notices to the adjacent property owners and all property owners within 500 feet of the site. There were about 5 people in attendance that evening, and the major concern was just the total size of the development. The planning board heard this on May 23rd, and they did recommend denial. The statement of consistency that they made that evening is on the overhead and on the screen for you, just for reference. But they basically stated that they requested the rezoning is unreasonable or not in the public interest due to concerns with unforeseen future growth and traffic when the Douglas warehouse is put into place. Staff is recommending approval of this. for two reasons. One is that our future land use map contained within the Troutman Strategic Plan recommends the site and its environs be developed for heavy industrial use. The proposed development is consistent with the future land use plan. We also want to note that the site's proximity to the interstate and the strategic plan's key guiding principle of promoting smart growth. It appears that the requested zoning of CZHI is seen as being appropriate with this vision as contained within the Troutman strategic plan as well. That is staff's recommendation as well as planning boards that we're presenting to you this evening. You have the option this evening of approving this as the applicant is requesting. You can choose to deny it, defer it for additional information, or you can choose to rezone it to a different zoning classification. That is the end of staff's presentation and recommendation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those, and the applicant is here and may have additional information for you as well.
So, does the applicant have any additional comments? One of the things we could do is any comments you made earlier, council could consider those as part of this particular request, but any additional?
And to honor your time, I think that would be appropriate, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. I would ask, could you go back to the conditions? I just wanted to make sure that the conditions were consistent with what our, yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, we don't have any other comments.
Okay.
We can obviously answer any questions that the council may have.
Okay. Council, before I open it up to the public, would you all be willing to any comments that were made as part of the annexation request, and comments that would include from the applicant as well as from the public, be considered part of this rezoning request?
Yes.
If there's a motion on that, Mr. Harris, is there a second?
I'm sorry, what was the motion again? I'm sorry.
That any public comments made by the applicant and the public be considered part of this rezoning request.
I'll second.
Motion is made, receive the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. Any public want to make any additional comments regarding this rezoning that might be different than what we just approved from the prior public hearing?
Well, my name is Eric Williams.
What was it?
Eric Williams, sorry. Sorry, I'm not a good public speaker. I'd just like to ask the traffic engineer, would you mind putting the traffic circle back up?
And if you don't mind, please direct your comments to the council.
Okay.
Yep.
Can the council tell me whether the traffic impact analysis was done considering the intersection as a future state or as present state?
Is that a comment that the staff knows?
Yes. Anytime a TIA is done, it's performed knowing what the conditions are and what they are intended on being based off of growth and other projects that are on board or in the pipeline that have also performed TIAs and or are working on projects.
So does that mean, so I guess my question is, or my concern is, if the traffic impact analysis assumes that Flower House is in line with Houston, then what is the impact if it's not aligned? And I'd like to point out that that we've discussed that the North Carolina DOT has this funded beginning in 2025, but that's only 10% of the funding is 2025. The 90% of the funding actually goes into 2026. So there's going to be a minimum of 2-year gap of this facility being active before that site is aligned. And if I did my math quickly, at peak AM, it sounded like they were going to have maybe like 2 or 3 trucks per minute turning left onto 21. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried turning left on 21, but it's going to take a truck about a minute. So you're going to have trucks backed up on Houston. You're not even going to be able to turn left until that alignment's been done. So I'd like the council to consider denying the request until such a time is that the intersection is aligned And in addition, I think to alleviate some of the concerns of the traffic that I've heard the developer comment that that there is some consideration of trying to get a road to connect to 21 on the east side of the interstate. I would request that the request is denied until such a time that that does exist, so that there is I'm not in objection to what the site is. It's just a matter of how it impacts the traffic of the town. And our town is in a unique situation where we're merging all of our commercial traffic, all of our residential traffic into one intersection. And I feel like the town needs to choose, we can't have our cake and eat it too. So just appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any other comments from public other than what was already stated?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to add one thing that I think is strategic in this consideration, and that is that in 2005, the town of Troutman undertook a major effort to figure out how to increase the water supply and the water pressure for the town of Troutman. The town of Troutman in 2005 had a water tank on Murdoch Road near the fairgrounds. That water tank was the only source of water for water that went down Highway 21 about 2.5 miles to exit 42. The water pressure at exit 42 at that time was about 10 to 12 pounds per foot of flow pressure. Insurance companies will generally not insure an industrial building that doesn't have a capability to generate 90 pounds of water pressure per square foot, and also a flow pressure of approximately 90 to 100 pounds per square foot. They also require that you have a water source, a supply, not just a pipe that the water goes through, but you got to have a supply of water. And I'm sure Councilman Hinkle remembers those days when that was a major concern of Troutman. So when we did the Lowe's project in 2007, we worked closely with the town of Troutman, with the state of North Carolina. I personally provided the property where the water tank is, the 1 million gallon water tank. That tank was built as a way to attract industry to Troutman. It was built as a way to provide a water supply because nobody could locate at exit 42 without that 1 million gallon water tank. And so we were able to convince Lowe's to contribute well over $1 million toward the cost of that water tank so that it would be available for industrial use. And in addition, Troutman was able to extend a water line down Houston Road as far as Westmoreland Road, a distance of a couple of miles. And all of us who had property in that area gave the right-of-way to Troutman for the extension of that water line. So today there's a 12-inch water line. That 12-inch water line is the reason that we have so many homes being built on Westmoreland Road and on Houston Road. And that's the reason that so many people want to be in the Troutman area. They want to live here. But it's also necessary that the town of Troutman increase its tax base because that water tank is not paid for. And the only way that water tank can be paid for and other things that Troutman needs and people in Troutman want is to promote the growth in business and the growth in people, and we can have things that people want and need and increase the quality of life here. And I'm sorry that large trucks go down the highway, and many of us who drive cars and pick up trucks, we don't like to be behind big trucks. But look around, everything we eat, everything we wear, everything we do arrives in a truck this day and time. So we can't get rid of the trucks. So really the question Troutman has to face is, do we want this type of development to go someplace else? Or do we want to take this opportunity? But the water tank, I just want to mention the water tank. Nobody's mentioned that. But that is a huge multi-million-dollar asset for Troutman. And I would certainly hope Troutman will take advantage of that water supply and that tank that's there.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay.
So I do agree with Mr. Hayes, I think is who it was, or Williams. Anyway, somebody that was talking earlier. The second entrance onto 21 on the other side, that definitely changes the way that I think about it, because obviously that's going to eliminate that traffic flow. But if they're going to be coming to Houston Road and coming to that intersection, I don't care what anybody says, I don't care what the NC Department of Transportation's documentation says, it's not going to happen in a couple of years. It's probably not. They don't have the funding. I just sat through a meeting with the person they're sitting there talking about it. The money is not there. Say whatever you want to say, but the money's not there. So if they bring this in, we're still going to have those roads misaligned. They're going to have trucks coming there, and they're going to be sitting there forever. If they bring in another road on the other side and put something there where there's going to be traffic lights, access for these people or these trucks to get in and out, and not use this side at all, then that's wonderful. But that's not going to happen right here at Houston Road. And unless somebody's willing to pay for it and buy the land to make this happen, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon either. So whether we want to say the North Carolina Department of Transportation is going to do it or not, it's not going to happen. She can't get 150 that she lives right off of widened. 20 years. She hasn't done that, and I know she hasn't been on the committee very long, but she hasn't had that widened. I'm sure she would love to have it. She lives right off of it. So it's not going to happen whether we have the chairman or not. That's all I've got to say.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. I will now declare this public hearing closed. Council, you have heard from the applicant, some based on the prior annexation request and some that you just heard. You've heard from staff as well. At this time, I will consider approval for ordinance 1322 titled an ordinance changing the zoning classification of the after described property from Outer County general business, highway business, and rural agriculture to Town of Troutman conditional zoning heavy industrial. Is there a motion regarding this approval of this ordinance?
I'll make that motion, sir, Mayor.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve ordinance 1322. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is made, received a second. Other questions or comments?
Well, I'll just have to say, I understand what Ms. Bartlett is saying, and I certainly don't disagree with her, but we can't be held hostage. We can't be held hostage by excuses from Raleigh. We've got to take care of Troutman, and I understand there's going to be inconvenience. There's going to be growing pains. I understand that. I drive in the same roads as everybody else does. But we can't, this is a great opportunity here, increase the tax base, to increase the job opportunities, to increase things that result from what I call the ripple effect of having business that attracts people, that attracts residents, that attracts businesses that people would like to see here. You know, they're not going to locate in a barren place where, you know, you don't have the people to support those businesses, and that's what we need to bring those people in. You know, somebody would like to make a comment, they'd like to see a nice tablecloth restaurant, nice restaurant in Troutman. They don't have to drive to Mooresville, Charlotte, Statesville to attend or to patronize a restaurant, nice restaurant. You know, this is the sort of thing we're going to need. This is the sort of thing that might attract a nice hotel down there at 42, which was planned before the Great Recession hit back in 2007-8. So, you know, while I would, in a perfect world, and my wishes would all be granted, all of these things would be accomplished that have been, you know, brought up from the negative look at this. And I understand these folks are not necessarily against growth. It's just the traffic seems to boil down with a lot of these developments now and requests for rezoning and annexation and so forth. I can't feel like we can be held hostage in this town and on this council, waiting for Raleigh to do something for us that I'll stop there. Okay, I will.
Any other comments?
Yes.
If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is to consider a statement of consistency, and I would ask that you please read that statement.
I'll do that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Rezoning to conditional zoning heavy industrial is consistent with the 2018 Troutman Strategic Plan's future land use map designation for the property as heavy industrial. The request is consistent with the current adopted Unified Development Ordinance, is reasonable and in the public interest as it proposes to allow industrial development in the areas of Troutman where it is appropriate.
There's a motion on the floor regarding our statement of consistency. Is there a second to the statement? Motion is made, receive a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, I think that the applicant said it during the public hearing, but I would still like you to request of them whether or not they agree to the conditions that are contained.
Thank you for that. Would you agree to the conditions as presented?
Yeah, if you want to put the conditions back up. I've got our application right here. Yeah, we'll agree to them. Yes, we'll agree to them.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
It's on
absolutely.
the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a annexation request, AX 2205, non-contiguous. Applicant is Piedmont Land Co. LLC. Howard Bryant, Solid Rock Venture, 17 acres. The pins are referenced in your agenda. It's Charlotte Highway and Cross Tie Lane. I'll now declare this public hearing open and turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an annexation request. The property is located at Highway 21 at Cross Tie Lane. It's a request to annex 17.861 acres. The applicant is Piedmont Land Co. LLC, which includes Howard Bryan and Solid Rock Ventures. Currently, the property is in unincorporated Ardell County. It's zoned GB, HB, and RA. The property that we're considering is highlighted in red for you on the screen. You can see here that this is the, the charter school. Smith Village, Smith Village is being constructed across the street, and the Lowe's Home Improvement is located here. That's the end of staff's presentation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hare. You said the applicant is here.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm. Anyone from the applicant like to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Matt Grant with Jordan Grant and Associates. We're the engineer of record on this project, surveyor as well. Just want to mention this is not contiguous, but this surrounds a piece that was just currently rezoned to an HB and annexed as well as the school, and then of course all the Jerome Howard property to the rear. And Again, we're looking for straight rezoning just because this is conducive with this area for commercial business.
Any questions for the staff or the applicant? Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public regarding this request? Okay. I will now declare this public hearing closed. Council, you've heard from staff and one of the applicants. At this time, we will consider approval of ordinance 1422, titled "An Ordinance to Extend the Corporate Limits of the Town of Troutman, North Carolina non-contiguous." Is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll make the motion. Consider
Motion.
approval of ordinance 14-22 title, an ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Troutman, North Carolina, non-contiguous.
Motion's on the floor regarding this annexation request as it pertains to the approval of the ordinance 1422 to extend the corporate limits. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second Councilman Henkel's motion.
Motion is made, received a second. Any other question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is a rezoning request. It's RZ 2204 Solid Rock Ventures request for rezoning of properties located on the east side of US 21 Charlotte Highway and Cross Tie Lane. The pins are as referenced in your agenda, 17.861 plus or minus acres from Ardell County residential, agricultural, general business and highway business district to Town of Troutman highway business. I will now declare this public hearing open and turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a rezoning request made by Solid Rock Ventures. This is the zoning portion of the annexation that was just approved. The property is located on the east side of Charlotte Highway, just on the north side of Cross Tie Road. It's adjacent to Iredell Charter Academy, and the site's approximately 17 acres. The property is currently zoned Iredell County RA, HB, and GB. It's located in Iredell County zoning jurisdiction, so an annexation was required before we could hear this rezoning. The property what is being requested is that this property be rezoned to Troutman HB, which is highway business. I do want to point out that this is a traditional or non-conditional rezoning. This is not a conditional zoning request. So there's no site plan or concept plan that's being presented as part of this application. With a traditional rezoning, you have to consider that every use in HB could potentially go on this property. A plan with the shopping center, though, I want to point out with a grocery anchor has been submitted. However, that is not part of this request this evening. Again, here are the properties. They're highlighted in red as to the locations right off Highway 21. This is a copy of the town's current zoning map. You can see that the adjacent properties are also zoned for highway business. So this request will be consistent with the area that the property is located. Our highway zoning district allows for primarily retail and service uses that are basically located on larger roads, at highway interchanges, and will attract people not only from inside our town, but outside as well. The future land use map shows the property as interchange commercial, as well as all of the other properties surrounding the site. The definition of interchange commercial per our land use plan is that it's typically properties that are typically located at or near freeway interchanges. This category of use does not compete with downtown retail. In other words, our local businesses here in downtown, they're very different. These are typically your larger retail uses, like your Lowe's, your Home Depots, your Targets, that type of thing. They typically locate in these type of districts. The Planning Board heard this on May 23rd. They unanimously recommended approval. Their statement of consistency is included in your packet, as well as highlighted on the screen for people to see and reference. Staff is also recommending approval of this request based on the fact that the town's future land use map contained within the Troutman Strategic Plan recommends that this site and its environs be developed for interchange commercial use. Highway business fits with this land use definition. So the zoning district that they're requesting is consistent with the land use. The property is also in close proximity to exit 42 off of I-77, and the majority of properties in this area are zoned for commercial use already. Any development will be required to meet the Troutman UDO. Any standards that our ordinance has, this development, whatever's developed on the property, must comply with. That includes landscaping, screening, TAA requirements, or stormwater measures. That's the end of staff's presentation. Again, council, you have the option of approving this as presented this evening. You can deny it. You can rezone it to a different classification. The only thing we cannot do on this one is condition it because it's not a conditional zoning. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those. That completes staff's presentation. And again, the applicant is here this evening as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hare. Does the applicant want to respond regarding the rezoning request? Anyone from the public like to comment regarding this rezoning request? Okay. At this time, I will declare this public hearing closed. Council, you've heard from staff regarding this rezoning request. We will now consider the approval of ordinance 1522 titled an ordinance changing the zoning classification of the after described property from RA residential agricultural, general business, and highway business to district to Troutman highway business. Is there a motion to consider this approval of this ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion we approve ordinance 1520-22 titled an ordinance changing the zoning classification of the after described property from RA to and GB general business and highway business to district to town of Troutman highway business.
Motion's on the floor to approve ordinance 1522. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is made, received a second. Any question or comment? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is proposed fiscal year 22-23 Town of Troutman budget. Excuse me, I did miss the one item. I was catching that as you all were catching it at the same time I was reading that. The next item we have to do is consider a statement of consistency. Please read your statement of consistency.
Okay, make a motion that rezoning to highway business consistent with the 2035 future land use map to allow appropriate highway-oriented commercial development at this location. The request is consistent with the currently adopted unified development ordinance. The request is reasonable and in public interest that proposed to allow commercial development in areas of Troutman where it is appropriate.
There's a statement of consistency motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is made, received a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. We will now consider the proposed 22-23 budget. I will now declare this public hearing open. Turn it over to Mr. Wyatt.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, clerk has a statement to read from the public. During the public comment period, they asked for it to be read and chose not to attend.
Okay.
Okay, this statement was emailed to me June 6th from a Dan Hester, resident of town of Troutman. In these most difficult times, I cannot understand why the expenditures are so far out of line. We're facing an inflation rate at a 40-year high impacting the residents of our town. This elected body must be tone deaf to the current environment. Allow me to point out a few areas where I question the logic of these massive increases. Good news, the town will recognize an increase of $1 million in ad valorem revenue. That's a 30% increase. Expenditures. General fund for the police department reflects an increase of $450,000, which is a 36% increase over last year's budget. This seems excessive. General fund expenditures for administration shows an increase of $200,000, which is a 41% increase over last year's budget. 41% is excessive. Most outrageous is administration salary slash wages, increasing $130,000 or a 58% increase. Shocking. I don't want to even address the increase in water being charged to the residents. Someone in administration said rates have not increased since 2016. That may be the case, but that's not the residents' fault. The town decided not to increase the rates, or just plain old missed it. But to hit the residents with a 16% increase in 1 year on top of the already ridiculous rate is appalling. In summary, this proposed budget is startling. The increases above are found throughout the budget. If anyone on the dais reads the final product, Mr. Mayor and councilors, I respectfully request you send this budget back to administration with orders to get real in so many areas. The optics for this council are not good if you approve this budget, which I expect you will.
Thank you. Any other comments?
We don't have any other that was emailed to us. I'll refer to Mr. Barker, see if there's any online at this time.
No, sir, not online.
That being said, Mr. Mayor, we've had several meetings, a budget workshop that took quite a bit of time for the staff to present and answer questions that you all had. The budget has been vetted back and forth by you all a few times, and also we had another meeting, and the budget has been posted on our website. It's been discussed on the radio, and we have adhered to all the statutes required of public notice of the budget, including public being invited to the workshops that you all conducted, and that part of the statutory requirement has been met. As far as the increases for those that haven't heard or haven't been took time to find out what the need for those were, just off the top of my head for the police department, we have identified and pointed out to you all after the budget was approved for this current year that we had a severe issue and evidence and was concerned. We presented to you all in open meetings why I felt we needed a position for that. Since that person has been working for the police department, we have had evidence returned to people that was sitting here over 20 years that should have been long returned. We've had a lot of evidence destroyed, and our evidence room is in proper shape, and we're still working on it as we go forward. We also learned, due to the demands and the reporting that is required in modern day law enforcement, that we needed more of an administrative person than what we actually intended on this person being. You all had concerns when you hired me as to proper coverage of law enforcement around the clock for our citizens. Since Chief Watson has arrived, I would like to point out that he has not only worked most of his day shift, but he has worked several night shifts, just to include the fact that we had proper two officers coverage in our town limits for all the citizens to be out there and be properly protected. That is so that we have proper policing in this day and time with what's happening nationally as law enforcement are targets. As Chief Watson also presented to you all during the budget workshop, we needed 2 additional positions for the police, and that is part of this budget. In addition to that, part of the increase in the budget shows from where we requested vehicles this past year, but for whatever reason, the manufacturer that we ordered those from could not produce those and cannot yet still give us a time if and whenever those orders will be fulfilled. That money has been rolled over and will be rolled over into the coming budget. So it makes it look like we have more expenditures for equipment there when it's actually a rollover from this current fiscal year into the next budget. Do you all have any questions on the police portion before I move on?
Any questions regarding? Okay.
On the administrative side, we discussed several times openly about there's 2 things. And just to clarify, on the administrative side, we had 1 position that we also increased last year to make sure that we was in compliance with federal and state laws when it comes to staffing and HR type issues that was going on. We have been very satisfied with that position. However, it was not budgeted in last year's budget. So when you compare that budget to this, it makes it look enormous that we increased $130,000. The HR position and 1 more administrative staff is the two position salary increases in that line item. The other 70,000 that would be left, is just shy of 70,000, is because of IT. We had considered hiring a full-time person, but due to the size of our town and staffing, we decided to go another route with contracted service. Instead of spending all the money for a full-time person, we're trying a contracted service to see if that will fulfill our needs so that we can save money to the taxpayers there. There's additional security that we had put in place so that we are not to be held cyber hostage, which is a common way of governments being held up for thousands and in some cases millions of dollars. Last year in North Carolina, there was at least 6 different counties or municipalities that were victim to this. So we increased this area to make sure that we don't become victim to that going forward. Also, as tax base increases and our extended area increases, the county collects taxes for us, but the fees go up when they do that. So that's the increase there. Anybody have any questions on admin before I move on?
Questions?
Public Works, as you all talked about in the budget workshop and with Adam Lippard, our Public Works Department is doing an outstanding job. We did increase one position in that department, which is a salary increase. We also have some equipment. Some of that will be rolled over from this past year to the new. Because of some used equipment being bringing more money than what it standardly would, I would use one example. One of the Kubota UTV type vehicles that is used, just to remind you all, you approved the purchase of and the sale of an old one. We had an old unit that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 years old, and we was able to sell it on gov deals by statute, where we should, one of the places that we could or should sell property that is declared surplus. It brought within 85%, I'm sorry, of what a brand new one would cost. So we was able to update equipment, get a bigger vehicle with a lot more versatility, new and not 7 years old, for basically about 13.5%, if I recall the exact expenditure, which was a wise turn. Instead of wearing one out like we normally do equipment before another one is purchased, we went ahead and sold it prematurely. But because of a jetter truck that was ordered in this past year's budget not being available, and again, like the police vehicles, not knowing when it could or would be available, it's certainly not in this budget year, we was able to purchase some of this other equipment in the current budget, and then move forward with next year's rollover of funds with some of the used equipment that will be sold or traded to then pay for the jetter truck once it arrives. But it does, of course, show a moderate increase in their budget for those things that I just mentioned. Does anybody have any questions about Public Works before I move on?
Okay.
Parks and Rec, we have the director here, but Parks and Rec, we discussed the fact that because of the rising cost of building materials, we could not build a concession stand for the monies that was put in this current year's budget to do so. So we decided to roll that money forward and then also add money to it to cover the cost of those materials so that we could proceed forward with a concession stand. We have, through the past and current directors of Parks and Rec, reached out to partners to help pay for some items in the park, such as a scoreboard. That is not in the budget, as the Troutman Rotary had volunteered to pay for that particular item, but it can't get installed until we have the electricity and the utilities out for the concession stand. But they have stepped up and made a long-term commitment to pay for those scoreboards. So we've had great partnership with the community, or some of the community, to pay for some of the items there. But in the budget, it shows a larger increase in expenditure for the concession stand. As I explained, it's a rollover from one year to the next, plus an increase in what you all decided to fund. Does anybody have any question about parks? And we have talked about doing a pocket park too. I spoke to you all about that and where the first one we hope to go once we have the proper equipment here that we have ordered, such as an excavator, track hoe, then we hope to proceed forward with doing a pocket park and again, providing, locating a community partner to help with that. But that explains their budget. If you all have any questions about Parks and Rec, I'll be glad to answer. The next one, that would leave us with water rates. We discussed the fact that for whatever reasons, water rates had been going up incrementally every year, and those had not been made to you all, made aware to you all, that we could find in any records. And also the staff did not put in any reports to increase that with prior personnel. Once we learned of that, we brought it to your attention of what this year's increase alone this year is 7%, but going back to 2015, I believe it was, we had several increases, but only the town had only went up moderately in 1 year, and that was about 2%, if I recall. And then we gave some back the following year. But collectively, in the years incremental, it has been 17.2% when compounded as what the rates have went up. That has not been made aware to you all, or were not made aware to you all, nor was it passed on to the citizens. In talking to a couple citizens and you all as elected officials, the question certainly was, why do 20% suggested increase in the budget, and why not do half now and half next year? Part of that discussion that we had not only in the budget workshop, but when it came up a second time with you all, was to confirm the fact that the Iredell County is required by statute to do reevaluation every 8 years. But several years ago, Gary and Paul may remember, I can't tell you exactly, I want to say it was in the neighborhood of 18 years ago, that they decided to split that up and do it every 4 years so that citizens would not be hurt so drastically when they did do a county-wide reevaluation. That county-wide reevaluation, of course, affects our citizens because we all live in the county. So when the reevaluation comes in, based off of some people's estimates out there, we're looking at probably a 20% increase or more to a lot of residents. Yes, some will be higher than 20%, appreciably so, and there will some be below that. Nobody is willing to throw a dart on the board and say it's going to be X percent without doing the proper studies and evaluation. That's why that will be done next year by Iredell County and the experts that they use to do so. But us looking long-term and projecting the rates, we as staff recommended to you all, and you all agreed to us, it did not make sense for us to split a percent this year, knowing that there's going to be a significant increase in property taxes next year. So that's why we recommended the rate to be all at once instead of breaking it out over a 2-year period. Is if the property taxes go up anywhere near what some speculate, that's still going to be a significant rate of increase to our citizens. The last part of the part when we're talking about public works is we looked at the collection of waste and leaf and limb pickup, and the fact that we had only been charging $1.80 per resident to do that when it was costing us closer to $7.65, eight some change to do all of those services. At you all's recommendation, we was asked for what other positions could we then provide support for if we was charging the appropriate fees. We checked some of the surrounding areas. We found that some was charging as high as $20 a month on the waste disposal and pickup fees, not including all the services that even we offer here is the town of Troutman. But the positions that we could add that was immediately talked about, one was part of that money would go to fund part of this administration position in the office, but also that we would have a code enforcement officer to make sure that the planning and zoning things was being adhered to that they had, plus our town ordinances that we already have. So that was the purpose in the discussion of the rate increase to people's waste bill, and that's also the water. I'll be happy to answer any questions on either one of those.
Any questions on water sewer?
That being said, that concludes my report. Justin, of course, our finance director, is here If we've provided you all the documents that we are aware that you all have asked for, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
And just to confirm, the ad valorem tax rate is still the same as it was last year and the year before and so on?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My knowledge, it has not changed since 2016.
I'm sorry?
To my recollection, it has not changed since 2016.
Yes, sir, correct.
Any other comments regarding the budget?
So
for
ad
this month?
valorem has not gone up since 2016.
Correct. Correct.
So now with this proposed, just want to be sure the averages are still worked out, because I know you guys nailed down the numbers here. Right, so 71.27 being the average, with the increase will go to 85.45 on the water,
That's correct.
and then $1.80 to on the
I believe the
limbs, so on
number
and so forth.
65. I think.
765.
765 total, right? 180
Yes,
to 765.
Yes, not an additional 765, just
Right.
total.
Other questions for staff regarding the budget?
Mr. Mayor, I failed to comment. A couple council members have reached out to me to ensure that we would not be coming back next year asking for a rate increase on the water, even if the town of Maiden and Energy United went up another, Newton, I'm sorry, town of Newton, and Energy United come back and made us aware of another rate increase based off inflation. And that's what they have told us by contract. That's what the rate of inflation increase is similar to the inflation rate. But several council members asked, could we guarantee that there would be no rate increase if it was done this year? And of course, without looking in a crystal ball and knowing exactly how bad things will be on the water side, I cannot offer a 100% guarantee. But based off of our budget and our analysis and the way we are projecting things, we feel 90% certain that we could absolutely say no, because of the way that the billing would be done. And we're also trying to look at other vendors as a way of providing us water that we hope to be cheaper to offset any increases that they wish.
For whatever it's worth, I kind of keep up with surrounding towns and municipalities, and, even though they hold firm on their ad valorem rates, they still, about every other year, go up on their public works or their utilities.
Yes, sir.
Be it electricity, if it's like Statesville, they have their own, but, or the water. They go up those, they may stay the same on everything, but it seems like it's a constant thing. And again, as you pointed out, we should have been increasing it slightly for a number of years, which that's in the past now, and we're trying to catch up and see it doesn't happen again. But it's something that we haven't done, that other municipalities have been doing, and now we're going to be doing it from now on. So we stay consistent, we don't have any more surprises like that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, as several of you all talked in the public meetings we had and individually since, I'd just like to point out that not the fault of the council, because you all were not made aware of the increases in rates so that you could adjust this collection. Also not the current staff that we have on hand were we aware that the increases occurred. So even though it's going to be impactful to all of us that live in the town, and I certainly do as you all, we want the best, cheapest rates we can get. And unfortunately, because of that failed collection and failed, as you stated properly, that other municipalities go up incrementally in those services because the cost of them go up. And we can't change that. We, as a town, were told in the 90s by the state and the federal government to give up our wastewater tributary permits. And prior to that, the town had an option of having its own freshwater facility and chose not to do that somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 years ago. And that's also, I understand. However, we are at the mercy of having to pay other towns and municipalities for both of those, freshwater and wastewater.
Plus maintain our own maintenance through Public Works,
Yes, sir.
our own system.
And I also would like to point out that the Public Works utilities is a separate budget than our ad valorem tax general budget. Because a lot of people say, well, just raise the taxes, and we can't do that. It don't
Oh,
work
no,
that
you
way.
can't do that.
Correct.
Enterprise fund, you can't do it.
Correct.
I'll stand on its own.
Any other comments for staff regarding the budget? Okay. Anyone here would like to comment from the public regarding the budget?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Get my name written here. First, I want to apologize if my stomach growls. I was not traveling like the mayor, but I did go from one thing to another thing to another thing, and I am starving. So I just wanted to say real quick.
What's your name? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Michelle Stewart.
Thank you. Michelle.
I wrote it and forgot to say it. I do not begrudge providing any of the things that the town needs. I love the town of Troutman very, very much. I've had a chance to talk to a few of you about it. I am very passionate about Troutman as it is, and I would disagree with the statement that was made earlier by, I forget which council member, I'm sorry, about people wanting to bring in business. A lot of people are very happy having the small town feel. The people that I've talked to, the straw polls that have been done on social media, I like to keep it small, which is not pertaining to this statement. My biggest concern is with what many people are concerned about, which is the water. I have many months when my toilet was not running, paid over what I was actually using, because we do have a minimum that's required to be paid regardless of whether or not you use it. I also use leaf and limb 2 to 3 times a year. So what we're doing by causing this very large jump in rates, which is by no fault of your own based off of the information that we just received, to jump a rate that high in the economic climate we are in, I think would potentially be tone deaf to what the town is currently going through. We do have many people who are already struggling to meet ends, and if we are going to all of a sudden cause a basic need to be jumped after we've already made it $5 to call in a payment, which I know some people say some municipalities don't use, but many municipalities do use. And even if they do charge a fee, it is much less than that $5 fee. So already, if I was to be out of town and have to pay my water bill, I'm paying $5 more, plus all of a sudden I'm having to pay, based off of the increase for recycling, trash pickup, leaf and limb, and the water increase, $18 to $20 more a month. That's $25 more than what I was already paying. And for many people, and sometimes me, that's just not feasible. So while the town does need to recoup those costs, we have been running many years, obviously, with that deficit. So I would just suggest, maybe instead of doing the large jump, and with the knowledge that there's a potential for a jump next year, we can't promise, obviously, because we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. Maybe we do a halfway, and then we do a halfway again the next year. We're already making that, we've made that money work somehow. And we also just saw multiple rezonings, and one of them alone was almost $200,000 in taxes. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I know how that's going to break down, how that's going to work in the budget. I don't. But we've already increased our tax base largely just in this meeting alone, not even talking about what we've done in this calendar year. So that already is increasing the money that is coming in. So to protect the citizens who do love this town, I would suggest looking at if there is an option, if there is a chance to half that change, to quarter that change, whatever that may be, just to take into mind the economic climate and what so many of us, including I'm sure you all as well, are going through.
Anyone else from the public want to comment? Okay. Council, you've heard from staff and the public. Any other questions or comment before I close this public hearing?
From us or from the crowd?
From y'all?
I've been struggling with this for a long time. Pretty much since the, not even the workshop, the strategic plan. No, what was, not the retreat.
Not the retreat, you're right.
Okay, strategic planning session, right? All right, so.
We should close the public hearing, or it sounds like discussion on a motion.
I don't know where he's going with this yet.
I thought it was comment.
It was comments regarding any of the,
Yeah, I'm not making a motion. Is that?
Well, the public hearing typically is a year from the public. We
Okay.
close it, and then the council
I wasn't sure
discusses.
if you are commenting on
Sure.
something that are already been stated from the staff or the public.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, we've discussed it. We've had public meetings, hearing from the public here. I see all sides, and this has been difficult for me, because there's a lot of things in this budget that this town needs. A lot of good things, a lot of good, up and down. And there's a few things that I just can't seem to swallow. And so, I've struggled with this. I've talked with a lot of community members, talked with fellow council members. And so, based on the comments that we've heard tonight, both that were submitted online, the words tone deaf came up. I would like to think that's not who we are up here. I know that I've struggled with it. I would like to think, that this isn't just an easy slam dunk decision. We knew this 2 months ago. So I want you to know that we do see these things, and we do consider these things. So, to hear the public comments, in my opinion, speaking for myself, validates the thoughts that I've had over the past couple months thinking about this. I'm not alone. I do see these things, so I appreciate the comments that were both submitted and, and stated here. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Council, you've heard from staff and the public. I will now declare this public hearing closed. We will now consider adoption of ordinance 1622, titled an ordinance on the Town of Troutman fiscal 22-23 budget ordinance. Is there a motion regarding this ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I truly understand how much work the staff went through putting together this budget, and how much we went back and forth with it to get the things that we've been asked by the public to provide, such as code enforcement and administration and the police department, that I make a motion to adopt ordinance 16-22 titled Town of Troutman fiscal year 22-23 budget ordinance.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to adopt the ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made, received a second. Any other question or comment regarding the budget? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Aye.
Nay. One nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the consideration for the approval of closing a portion of Lytton Street for a First United Methodist Church special event. Mr. Wyatt?
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is something that the First United Methodist Church has done for many years. However, our town ordinances require before there can be a street closure, it takes approval of town council. And once we got the request, we have submitted it to you all timely to consider. This will be done for a 3-hour period in the evenings. The rest of the street that will access the businesses located off of it, such as the back entrance into Pellegrino's, Domino's, and those type businesses, will still be accessible. It's just will be closed for that portion directly in between the church and the playground and their parking lot.
Council, you've heard from Mr. Wyatt regarding this request. Is there a motion regarding this request?
Can I make a motion?
No, ma'am. It has to be made by the council. That's quite all right.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor, that we approve the closing of the portion of Linton Street for the First United Methodist Church special event, sir.
Motion's on the floor. Is there a second? Motion is made, received a second. Any question or comment? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is comments from council and staff. I will start with Mr. Harris.
Okay. First, if you saw the paper earlier this week, I'd just like to recognize that the Keystone Powder Metal Company, formerly known as ESC, received the Gold Award from the Department of Labor. Their 15th year in a row receiving that award, and they're a major part of our town and provide a lot with our park and everything. So I just want to recognize them for such a good job there. And then also, again, thanks to the staff. I know this budget was not easy to come by, and we had a lot of issues to address and meeting needs and correcting problems from the past. But I just want to thank you all for your hard work getting there.
Mr. Now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I just would like to congratulate all our students on graduating from our schools and to thank all the teachers and the staff for all they did for our students. And also, we won't have a meeting before our 4th of July parade, so I'd like to invite all our residents and citizens to come out to the parade, and then later on that evening, come out to the fireworks show. It's something that we really put a lot of effort and work into, so it's for everybody's enjoyment.
Thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I think we both just got kneecapped. Great job, guys. You guys got everything that we were going to talk about. So, yeah, again, we do have some 4th of July is really special. I've always had a great time going to the parade. And so, and luckily I can see the fireworks not far from my house, so.
Or at your house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, parking's much more expensive at my house. But yeah, I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing fellow members of the community out there.
I just wanted to say happy summer to all of our children. I know they may not be watching, may not be the most exciting thing for them. But happy summer, and I hope that they have a safe and enjoyable summer. Eddie had 2 graduates this year, so I thank you from them. And also, like Eddie was saying, the parade is coming up. We always have a good time, and I have to put a plug in for myself. I'll be 50 this year during July, so it's a holiday. It's the whole month. Holiday, so.
You said 30, right?
30, that's
30,
right.
okay. Just to make sure I heard you right.
That's all I have.
Great. Mr. Hinkle?
You got the whole message?
Well, I wanted to also piggyback on George. He seemed to hit on all the good topics tonight. Thank you. When you made the comment about the business spotlight, it just brought a thought to my mind that, and I've made this comment before, but I'll make it again. While the town retains, the business, or I should say the ability to spotlight businesses as they so see fit, I am looking forward to again stating what I had before, maybe talking with, partnering with our young organization, relatively young, of the Troutman Business Network, and seeing if we can work out some things with them to go hand in hand, and also dealing with some good candidates and suggestions for the business spotlight, and also partnering with them concerning the shop Troutman. I think is one of the things I see on the website now and then.
And this goes along with what I was mentioning about, some of the industry bringing in people, and people have to shop somewhere, and I'd rather for them shop in Troutman and not Statesville or Mooresville. We're talking about tax rates and utility costs. If you want to keep both those down, then you need to have, it's just like insurance. You got to spread the risk out, or you've got to spread the cost out, and that makes it less for everybody. If you don't, the people have to pay more. So I look forward to working, hopefully, with the Business Council. We're able to connect with them and talk and discuss on helping us on several fronts. Again, the business spotlight, as George mentioned, in the case of PSC, but also in other areas to help continue to develop Troutman and the service, what I call the service retail industry, where people can shop Troutman and not go elsewhere. I don't care if it's a pair of pants, a nice meal, or we have some ice cream shops, but some some nice places where you can go on a Sunday afternoon or during the week, especially during warm weather, and things like that. That I would like to see that we do here in Troutman and not somewhere else. So these are things that we can all work together on, and who better work with than people who are the business people themselves, and know what the needs are, and can advise the town on what those needs are, and maybe where we need to focus some of our resources. We have some accounts in our budget that support economic development, and not so sure those are used very often, and this is where the Business Council can come in to help us target some of these things and to get people interested, to maybe work with a partnership on us, and they put a little skin in the game, we put some skin in the game, and help with the economic development, and again, providing resources for people to, and I keep saying this, and for a reason, shop Troutman. So, with that, I will pass it on to you, Mr. Mayor, but I look forward to those days.
Thank you. I appreciate all the other topics that were discussed, and I was one of the early adopters of recognizing our business spotlight, and so look forward to other council members picking that up and continue to help highlight current business and future business in the town. I'll take a little bit different path tonight because, again, first apologize. I had emergency out-of-town schedule conflict that started over the weekend, and I came in here on two wheels. I was in the speed limit, Chief, but maybe. But good to be back in town. Hadn't even got a chance to sit down and have a meal with the family yet. But again, glad to be back, and I wanted to be back for this meeting. But a couple things I wanted to at least acknowledge. I appreciate the presence of members of our community who continue to come in and share their thoughts and interest as to what's going on in our town, and expressing in a very civil way, because I do travel the parts of the country that things aren't all that civil, and I appreciate civility when it comes to conversations in our town, and I think, as my mother always say, you get more with honey than vinegar. And so, again, I appreciate people who are willing to step in and get their hands dirty and help council understand what's going on, what's their perspectives. I would say that at least since I've been on council over the years, councils have been willing and encouraging feedback. And as we have gone through a number of iterations on our long-range plans, and I've been on council where we've initiated a number of these long-range plans, and we've gone to the community and we've encouraged people to give feedback. That these council members who are taking these tough votes are having a difficult time trying to balance that, but these long-range plans are exactly what they are. This is what the community is saying to us that they want, and it's not hard to change these stances on a dime when you have businesses who are coming in willing to spend millions of dollars to do what we say we want for our community, and that's tough. And I would say, at least since I've been on this council, it's been a balance. When I joined the council, there were thousands of homes, residential homes on the books. We knew we needed to balance that because we have residential that we knew was coming. What we didn't have was we didn't have business. We didn't have that balance. And so folks were just talking about increasing taxes, not even fees. I mean, this was taxes. And so we've come a long way where we've tried to limit the amount of increased taxes, but it's because we've tried to balance our growth with some of our industrial businesses. And we know that there's a thin line, there's a balance. So we're hearing you. It's not going on deaf ears. And we believe that like any other town, if you're in North Carolina right now, there's a reason people are coming here. There's a reason we have an additional elected official in North Carolina at the congressional level. There's a reason. There's a reason some states are losing congressional districts because we are in a good place to live. I would love to say that we could put a barrier out at 77 and we could leave Troutman like it was when I was a kid growing up here. But I know that's not the case. And as soon as people stop off that interstate, the very moment they come in, they see what we all see. They want to stay. And I'd love to say, well, no, the door is barred, but I can't, right? And so we're trying to balance that. And so what I would ask is for continued patience, continued civility with these elected officials as they make these tough decisions. Not only that, but our staff are taking a number of arrows as well. They take some of the more arrows than what we have. They're trying to take ones that they don't want to give to us, right? And so I would ask for patience for our staff as well. When we have events in our park, we're trying to keep our greenways. We're trying to keep the standard of living that we've always had. We want a park that our community has said we want, a splash pad. We want these things in our park. We're trying to deliver on those things. When I came, there was a field out there, and there was a couple of, playground equipment. There was not a pavilion. Half of it wasn't paved. It wasn't nice. It was a park. We were working on it, and it's getting better every day. But again, I would ask for community patience and community involvement. I know I'm speaking to the choir. I'm hoping maybe there's some people out there online that don't show up and don't engage. But you folks engage, and I appreciate it. I really appreciate those businesses also who come and who spend the money, who think of Troutman as an opportunity. Because again, I think we put out that banner and we asked them to come. And for us to say, well, yeah, we put that out there. No, we don't want you. That's a hard decision. So understand that. We know, and I think one member of the public stated what councils have stated in the past, which is we don't want to have people who have to drive 45 miles to have a decent job. They should be able to live here, work here comfortably, and not have to drive a long way. And now we know what gas prices look like. There's a reason for that, okay? So we've asked for a inventory of homes that looks a little different than what I grew up in, which was everybody had a home and you had acres. That's what it looked like. And we've tried to change that a bit. And so hopefully we'll get continued inventory where people can have affordable homes and still live in Troutman and not have to leave for work and hopefully shop and play. So again, I appreciate your patience. I've been on the road too long today, so you can tell. I don't take this kind of opportunity very often, but it was bubbling up a little bit. So again, I appreciate it. Appreciate the staff. everybody who continues to work and engage with our town. We're growing, it's growing pains, and we're going to have to deal with that. But hopefully we'll do it together, and we'll do it responsibly. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Wyatt.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Chief Watson for any comments he'd like to make.
During the month of May, the officers of the police department responded to 216 calls for service. They completed 48 incident investigation reports and 21 motor vehicle crash reports. Officers made 87 traffic stops, during which they located 2 stolen motor vehicles, several subjects that were wanted both within Iredell County and other counties. Narcotics violations were detected. I believe it was 17 narcotics charges, and 4 impaired drivers were arrested. Officers are continuing to do foot patrols through ESC Park, residential areas, and also do vehicle patrols through the residential areas to ensure they're being visible where people live and make sure those are safe. The department has seen no significant increase in criminal offenses reported between April and May. And we've been focusing on the school is wrapping up the school security and helping ensure that the students and parents felt safe with their kids at school.
But before you leave that, again, please reach out to our SROs and anyone who's filling in to thank them, because it's important that they know they're supported, and keeping our kids safe is definitely, it's not just our responsibility, but it is our responsibility. So thank you and the team for doing that.
You're welcome. I'll make sure to pass that on to him, Mayor.
I'd like to just echo some of the comments that the mayor and other town council made. I appreciate the involvement in the community and the comments that we've heard tonight. Just speaking on from a finance point of view, we don't take decisions lightly. We analyze the best we can. We take all the information we can get. I would like to say it was a team effort. The department heads here are very cognizant of their budget. They take it personally. They don't want to go over their budget. They want to stay within their budget, and I'm very appreciative of that from my coworkers. But regarding some of the, like the phone payments, for example, the reason, and here soon, hopefully very soon, I'm still in contact with them. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll have an automated phone system that residents can call into and make payments so that they don't even have to speak to someone up front. The reason for the fee is because it protects us and it protects you as the customer. I'll give you a little example. I was taking a payment yesterday. I entered in her credit card number 5 times, and I kept getting an invalid number. I said, let's try one more time, and then it worked. So I don't know if that was me punching it in wrong or her telling me something that I didn't hear. It's just hard to be up front and take phone payments all day long. Also, it's a time thing, because when I'm on the phone or one of the ladies up front are on the phone with a resident taking a payment, sometimes it takes 30 seconds, sometimes it takes 10 minutes. And during that 5-10 minutes, the phone will ring 20 times, and then that makes you all, which I understand, angry that nobody's picking up the phone to help you out. So it's just a better way of doing things if we can, because as the town grows, it's just going to get worse if we keep doing it the way we were doing. So that's why we're changing things up there. But again, I'm very appreciative of all the comments we've heard, and we don't take things lightly, so thank you.
Well, I'll just echo what the mayor said. Troutman is definitely growing, and the planning department continues to be very busy. We have received several applications for projects. It's going to be a very busy summer. The barium project, the barium property, We got that application in last week. So staff is starting the process of reviewing that, getting meetings scheduled. Community meetings will be a part of that process, which is part of our conditional zoning process. So that will take up a lot of our time and a lot of your time. We just invite the community to please be involved in all these meetings because your input is important. As part of that Barium project, we really didn't have a zoning classification that would fit what they're looking to do. They're looking to do a true mixed-use development, similar to a Birkdale Village, that type of thing. So they've submitted for some text amendments. So we're going to process those first. So you all will see that very shortly. But I did want to mention that. We've also received this evening, an application was laid on my desk here tonight for a large residential development off of Weathers Creek Road. Again, the site plan, the first time staff saw it, we weren't real happy with it. I have to say the applicants have gone back to the drawing board and really brought us something it looks pretty, different and unique, and something I don't think we've seen before in terms of a layout. So it's got a little bit more creativity to it, but that will be coming to you all probably towards the end of the summer. So those are some of just a couple of the applications we have. We have a lot more, but we also started our land use plan rewrite. Our advisory committee met for the first time in June. Councilman Harris and Councilman Oxshire are helping us out with that, and we had a lively discussion. I thought it went well. I thought the initial meeting, there was a lot of good conversation, good ideas. So we will meet again this month. One thing I wanted to mention is that we're having our first public input session on the 29th. It will be here in this room from 6 to 8. So we're trying to get the word out. We want to invite the community in to come in and be a part of that so we can hear from the community as to what you all want to see on that land use plan and what direction you would like the town to go in with those types of decisions. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Hey, I have several things coming up in June and July. Well, first off, we have a golf league every Friday night at Larkin. So if y'all want to come out, play golf, come on. We have a farmer's market every Tuesday at ESC Pavilion from 4 to 7. Also, in conjunction with South Ida, we're doing sports camp. So we'll have a first basketball camp is in June 13th through the 15th, and then we'll do another one July the 27th through the 29th. We have a volleyball camp June the 20th through the 24th. Softball was June the 20th through the 22nd, and then football was July the 11th through the 15th. And it's for grades K through rising 8th graders. Also, in conjunction with South Iredale, we're having a skills day on Mondays, every Monday in June. So I have met with the coach, and South Iredale football players actually will run the camp for the kids. And that's also, it's free, and it's for ages K through 8 as well. And of course, we have an art camp in June 27th through the 30th from 9 to noon, and it'll be here. And then after that, we'll have an art show on that Friday, July the 1st, and it'll be at the EC Park. And then, of course, we have the Independence Day Parade, and then we'll have a fireworks at night, and then we'll have a Firecracker 300 that's Sunday at 4 o'clock. So you can come out and sweat everything you did the night before.
He's going to be throwing firecrackers at people when they run. I don't know what else it is.
He can throw all he wants to me. I can't run any faster.
What was the time, Chip, on the, what was the one you were asking about?
Oh, the golf league.
Golf.
Oh, it's 5:30 at Larkin.
5:30 every Friday?
Every Friday.
When,
yes, sir.
how long will that continue?
To mid-August.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then once it, probably start back in September.
I was just surprised to have Chip. I don't know what you did. That's awesome.
First of all, before I get much into what I've got to say, we acknowledged it earlier in the week, but former Mayor Pro Tem R.J. Wilson passed away this week, and just want to acknowledge that. That's why we also are missing another staff report, and that our prayers and thoughts go out with the family, and of course, somebody that served us and our community in several things, not just in that role. That being said, moved on, I've spent a decent amount of time email with a couple of you all, our town attorney, in reference to the town charter. It is making its way through Raleigh as we had submitted it and trying to get some things cleaned up. Spoke with Representative McNeely and the staff down there, just like when we first went over this from the committee last year, and the several meetings that we had. Councilman Harris was on that, and we had several meetings to discuss some of the things as the town council has tried to advise. If you can take some wording out of there to where there's already an existing state statute, that makes sense to try to do. But in doing that, they went over several things today, and they will give us a rough draft copy before it's voted on to make sure that we're all still good with whatever changes are made. But that was the majority of our discussion that took a decent amount of time, was to make sure of what the council's intent was when we sent this down to them. That being discussed, couple of the things I'd like to talk about is when projects are passed, and I think it was Michelle that said something, and I apologize if it was not Michelle, talking about somebody from the floor this evening said, hey, that you just passed these buildings and now we get this tax money that comes from them. Basically, that's not what their comments was, but they was alluding to the fact if we pass it now there's taxes. Well, most of these projects that are passed is a minimum of 3 years before they are built. 4 to 5 years, depending on if there's any economic incentives for them and what they're doing. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 years before we see the full benefit, if everything stays on time, of what that actually impacts us directly in our budget. So when we're saying we need things, I unfortunately have to say we've had at least one resignation this week and one more, because our staff is dealing with so many different things like what has been discussed here. When somebody's calling on the phone, and is your word, Mayor, they're not using civility and they're not using patience, and when our people are out shopping and trying to be parents in the community and they're getting attacked because people have their different opinions, or you have groups in town that want to meet and have discussions and talk about you all or staff, and then that bleeds back to them. We've had one resignation, and that does bother me. It bothers me a lot that people have great potential to serve our citizens, but yet a very select few, and I do say a very select few, want to use it as an opportunity of attacking instead of trying to understand. And as you said, and several council members said, have appropriate civility and open dialogue to get there. I certainly will be one to always say that if we're all in agreement, we're never going to accomplish much. So we have to have the disagreement, and we have to have the difference of opinions so that we all can work together and try to do better for the future. That don't mean that we're going to agree on topics, but when it starts affecting staff and we can't keep staff here because of how these things are happening, then that's bad. And what we are producing as a town staff, I don't know how better we can communicate than when we propose a budget and have numerous discussions. This is why we need these extra positions, and then at least with some, it appears to fall on deaf ears. They think apparently that we're up here having a party. But I've got several employees working 50 and 60 hours a week just to maintain. And then to be told that we're pocketing things and getting kickbacks and whatever other negative comments certain groups want to use and say is not appropriate. But I do look forward to kind and courteous discussion, and have had plenty with numerous citizens that disagree with either our views as staff that we have offered in the planning, or asking questions about how we have certain things in town, or talk about you all in your position. And yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you saying that staff does take care of some time for electeds, because that's part of our job too. But at the same token, if electeds also reach out to the citizens, this is where we all work together to make the community better. It's like having a pineapple upside down cake recipe is the analogy I've always used. Which ingredient is the most important? Well, when you go to eat that cake, the one that's missing was the one that was most important. And that's the case. It's not the pineapple or the cherry or the flour or the sugar, it's the one that's missing. So if we can't have all the ingredients together, we're not going to be as fruitful and prosperous as the town of Troutman as we should be. The other thing I'll talk about is 2015 and 16 as an example. Some of you all on council remember something as simple as the citizens of Troutman voted to pass for an ABC board. Well, 2 years later, it still was not making any progress. There was a whole lot of talk and a whole lot of discussion going on about it. And then once there was action made, that year it went from a thought and a process in 2016 to it being completed. The so-called experts that everybody hired said it would be 7 to 8 years before it's seen a profit. And the town and several people criticized various electeds at that time and staff and volunteers on the ABC board for what they progressed and saw as a future. But a lot of people had a lot of negative comments to make back then about that particular process. And like I say, it took 2 years. But by the time that liquor store opened up, our town ABC store, not only did it prove the experts and everybody's opinions that was wrong, that was commenting in a negatively fashion, it saw a profit that was projected to take 7 years within the first calendar year. And not only have they exceeded that, this year, as Leighton Getzinger, the chairman of the ABC board, has presented to us, I'm looking forward to see if they pass the $3 million mark, because we still haven't got to the 7th year yet that it was supposed to take us to make the first $1 million. And that don't include the expansion that they made in the liquor store that's already been paid for as well, and the additional property that they bought that's been paid for. So a lot of times when we get ourselves into a box and we want to say things can't be done, if that's what you believe, it can't and it won't be. But when you have certain people together that's willing to struggle and willing to work outside the box, that project is a perfect example of one that could and did succeed because a certain few people believed in it and took it to progression. I would also like to thank for all the council members that commented and asked for feedback publicly on budgets. All of those questions have been addressed. And I appreciate every staff department director and working with the staff, as Justin said, as a person that lives in this town and pays taxes as you all, any way I could figure out how to pay less was my goal and key. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud of all the staff here, is we do have more staff working inside the town limits than at any time in our history. But that's also causing a little bit of grief when they can't go out in public and enjoy a decent meal without being interrupted and calling names because some of the negativity that's being said. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right. Good meeting tonight.
Okay, sir, in honor of our Public Works Director's grandfather and our former Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. R.J. Wilson, I make a motion we adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, welcome to stay.